Close enough.
Here we go. I'd like to call the order of the meeting of the Board of Selectmen for Monday, September 22nd, 2014. Madam Clerk, lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and please remain standing for a moment of silence after.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be advised that our Governor, Deval Patrick, has ordered the United States and the flags of the Commonwealth be lowered to half-staff. The state buildings at sunrise until sunset on Tuesday, September 16th, 2014, in honor of Special Sergeant Brian K. Arsenal, United States Army of Northborough, who was killed in action September 14th, 2014, in Ghazni, Afghanistan. Thank you. The agenda for tonight, 7:05 will have public input, both by the public and by members. 7:10, police reserve officer appointment. 7:15, operating capital budget priorities guidelines, joint meeting with the finance committee, the school committee. 7:45, a TIF request about a new business that's looking to move into our town. Very exciting. 8 o'clock, public hearing on road layouts for New Estate Road and Nagog Hill Road. 8:15, turf fields design. 8:45, town administrator, assistant town administrator for finance and budget, going over A, November 12th, special town meeting inserting articles. B, highway, waste hauling contract. C, staffing vacancy for tax collector. 9 o'clock, other business. Consent agenda, approve a Littleton Community Farm sign on Wilderness Road. Minutes approval, then adjourn. Mail?
Mr. Chairman, just a few items in the mail packet. One is a letter that was received from the Secretary of Transportation, just announcing that that his department will be initiating an active street certification program, which is one of the initiatives that this board voted to support when it was a matter of legislation. There will be some money attached to it. It has not yet been determined how much, but it will be a competitive program. Communities that have adopted, as we have, complete streets policies will be eligible to become certified and then apply for state grant funding under that program. So we're looking forward to that opportunity. Next, I just wanted to remind the board and the public about a couple of meetings that are coming up. One is tomorrow night, Tuesday night, September 23rd at 6:30 p.m. at the middle school. It's a second public forum on development of a housing production plan for Littleton. It's sponsored by our housing committee. It will be conducted by the planning consultants at MAPC, and it will lead us towards the updating of our housing production plan, which is one of the elements of the master plan. Then on Thursday, October 2nd at 9 a.m. at Devon's, there is a regional transportation forum which is being co-hosted by the Magic subregion of MAPC, which I chair, and the Fitchburg Line Working Group, which has its meetings typically at Devon's. We'll be focusing on the recent improvements to the schedule for the commuter rail along the Fitchburg line. Littleton Station, as we mentioned at a previous meeting, is now getting South Acton Station. Still waiting for the MBTA to issue a press release announcing that information, though, but we're going ahead and planning for shuttle service. We're engaging a number of discussions with affected groups like the businesses, our neighboring communities. We've had interest expressed by Devon's that they would like to jump on the bandwagon of what we call the Crosstown Connect Transportation Management Association, so that we can maybe have a north-south link from Devon's to Littleton to Acton, as well as an east-west from Boxborough to Littleton to Westford. Both of those, it's, the hub is Littleton, which works for us, I think. So we're happy to have those discussions going on. Then the last item in the packet has to do with a new, a change in the law and a change in procedure for the Alcoholic Beverages Control Commission, the ABCC, that the law's been changed to allow retail package store licensees to open at 10 a.m. on Sundays. And they do not need permission of that, it's by right. They do not need the permission of the local licensing authority or the ABCC, but they do need to notify the local licensing authority. So thus far, we've received written notice from one of the licensees, from Donaldson's, and so we'll send them an acknowledgement of that. I would expect that we'll be hearing from some of the other licensees as well. But that's a change in the law, and so it's a new procedure for us. And that's it.
Open up to the public for public input.
Darrell Baker, Gristmill Road. Is there a thing there about the safe streets or city streets or complete streets there? You know, we've been struggling with the state about the light at the end of the intersection of the high school and the road there in terms of the amount of traffic versus safe ingress and egress for students during the day, particularly those that drive. It's interesting, they just put in sidewalk down that whole street and a 40 mile per hour, changing from a 25 to a, boosting it up to a 45 mile an hour zone right in front of the crosswalk there. Is there any chance that we can get some help through that program on trying to deal with that intersection?
We may or may not be able to through the program, but we can certainly have further discussions with Mass DOT about that.
Yeah, I think they just sent us a follow-up letter that says they'll continue to study the intersection.
We've got some other outstanding issues with Mass DOT as well, including that we're looking for the re-signalization of the intersection at the Common, to have dedicated left turn lanes in all four directions. So we can certainly be following that up with the school department and with Mass DOT.
I'll make sure we get a copy of the letter we just received from DOT sent over to your office also.
Thank you.
Was that the last one in response to Mike's last letter?
It just came in, it's in this week's packet for us, so it just came. Yeah, I think it was in response to Mike's letter.
Anyone else in the public input?
Yeah, Fred Faulkner, 141 Harwood. Keith, is there any talk in the group that you're chairing or the Fitchburg Line group about expanding the parking at the new station? The parking lot is overflowing daily. People continue to get tickets, but they still park there. I mean, it just seems like whoever put it in, you know, they put in something they figured they could fill, and now it's overflowing. And now you're talking about the potential of a crossroads kind of thing built around that stop at the station.
There is, through the chair, there is a request that this board has voted to support in the past. We actually have our regional planning agency, MAPC, preparing a feasibility study, which the MBTA has told us they need in order to proceed through their channels to add parking to. So that's on our radar screen. I counted 14 cars on the. It's 200 spaces. We're at about 107% or more. I know the chief counted 34, I think, one day recently. So we know we're over capacity, and we are working with the T to try to add parking nearby.
It just seems to make sense if you've got the increased schedule and you're already overflow parking. There's got to be an opportunity there.
Yeah, it was a $2 million grant that we helped advocate for. It wasn't our money, but that we did advocate a few years ago to have the state or the feds or someone, it ended up being the state economic development secretary, find $2 million so that the MBTA could purchase the adjacent property so that there would be 200 parking spaces attached to the brand-new commuter rail station. So we're engaging in that same discussion now that we
We're
need,
following that.
hey, we need another 2 million or more and some more parking.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll go to the board. We'll start this end this week. Ms. Hebert?
Just one quick thing from my side. This Saturday is the 300th closing ceremony at the middle school, starting at 10. There'll be the contents of the old time capsule as well as the new time capsule on display. Some fun videos, which lots of people took part in. It'll be a good time, so come down and show your support for the closing of our 300th.
I thought that video was going into the
And it will.
capsule.
We'll look at it and then
Yeah,
we'll
look
put
at
it
it
in there.
first.
Yeah,
It'll be destroyed.
Be on some media that they won't be able to read in 50 years.
no one will ever see it.
Put the computer in there also.
Yeah. Copies.
Mr. Carr?
First, I'd like to congratulate the ball committee for the 300th ball last Saturday. It was a blast. We had a great time. A lot of people showed up, and I thoroughly enjoyed myself. So good job. Great job.
Good job, General.
McCurdy? Mr. Chair. Mr. Gallo?
I would add, 300th ball was absolutely wonderful, and to all the folks who put it together, the many, many long months, nearly a year plus of work to do that, thank you to them all.
I'll be the third one to talk about the ball. My wife was involved in it heavily, and it was a great night. I thought they did a great job by having different venues and not just a dinner, but they had people in the ballroom, out in the tent, and in the hallways. It was just a phenomenal time, and once again, as far as the 300th committee goes, the celebration so far has been outstanding. I can't wait for closing on Saturday morning. Also, not part of the official 300th, but sponsored by the Friends of the 300th that night from 4 to 9 at Kimball's. There's Littleton night at Kimball's. You can buy tickets at My Town Sports, and there's unlimited food and Kimball's legendary ice cream buffet with toppings. And activities with this ticket include bumper boats, driving range, pitch and putt, mini golf, and 2 tokens for the batting cage. And all the profit of that goes to the 300th committee to help offset some of the bills that we do have on that celebration. So, that's it. I'd like to call on the police chief to come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Take a seat. Chief, I understand we're getting close to the total number you want for the,
It seems like it gets within my grasp, and then we lose a couple more, so. I just lost another reserve,
Okay.
but for our reasons, not necessarily their reasons. I'd like to introduce Joe Roy. He's a retired captain from the town of Westford. He actually retired in 2012. He was in charge of all the patrol operations. Mr. Roy is also the gentleman who has been assisting me with all the policies and procedures for the accreditation. So Joe not only will take over on as a reserve, he'll also take on the job as accreditation manager, especially in the interim, while there's a new deputy chief getting up to speed and things like that, so it takes some of the pressure off of there. So he's going to come on board and finish up accreditation with us there.
nice catch.
You know, I've known Joe Roy for my entire career, and I have nothing, nothing but praise, and I'm so pleased to actually be able to bring him forward as a reserve for us. For that, Mr. Roy.
Thank you very much. As the chief said, I worked in Westford for 36 and a half years. I retired as a captain. Westford went through the accreditation process twice while I was there, and working on the process there. I feel like I'm able to bring a lot of that experience over here to Littleton and get the Littleton department through the process and get certified as an accredited agency.
Board questions?
Senior experience, that's a good score. See,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
look at that.
good
huh?
one.
Good one.
Yeah, looking at that resume, I could,
Yeah.
we don't need a motion.
All right, I'll move that the Board of Selectmen vote to appoint Joseph Roy of Westford, Mass. as a reserve police officer for the town of Littleton Police Department.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you for helping.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much.
Nice to meet you as well.
Chief, before you go, could you give us a little update on your deputy process?
Sure, the deputy process right now is out for design with the assessment group. I gave them the policies and procedures and the duties of the deputy chief and also sergeant, so they're out doing their designing. They do that outside of my purview, and they'll come back and then run their assessment center November 3rd and 4th will be the assessment center. And then we'll move on to the next step of the, the interviews with the chiefs panel with, obviously with a couple town residents on it and things of that nature. That's all moving forward.
And what are you looking for, an effective date, or?
January 1st, we're still working, timeline is still working fine.
Good.
As far as that goes.
Good. You also had mentioned earlier about a canine. What's going on with that?
I'm working on that. That actually was in part of my process. I'm hoping to bring that before the board the next meeting or two for the grant program out of Cambridge. It's a grant that basically will fund the startup of the program and then show you what the budget would look like, going forward, which the police union, the police explorers have actually asked to adopt the canine program and put it in their fundraising and to continue that program. So we're definitely moving forward with that, and looking forward to getting back to full strength. Obviously, we've had an employee out for a lengthy amount of time. Hopefully that'll end in December, and just kind of get a little bit of normalcy for a while, getting the promotions done, getting canine officers selected, getting everything moving forward, and then kind of taking a step back. One other thing I have been toying with a little bit is starting a cadet program, which is in between reserves and the explorers. It's actually for college students. I'd like to do I'm thinking of probably doing 4 cadets, which would work for the department on a limited basis, 10 to 15 hours a week. It would be limited to Littleton residents in college for criminal justice. Also using that as kind of a recruitment tool to try and recruit some locally, and hopefully some that move up out of the explorers will go into that program and stay locally. So it's another thing I'm just looking at, but we're moving forward.
Community police.
Accreditation is moving forward. Again, hopefully we'll make the December cut for the first step if possible, and then we just keep on moving.
Excellent.
Great.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Canine, I got a little white doggy.
Appreciate it. I don't know, that thing bit me before.
Dangerous dog hearing?
Dog never bites.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. Congratulations.
so much.
Oh, one other quick thing, I do want to also bring up, I don't know if you all saw in the newspaper, we had a 90-year-old woman who got her purse snatched in Donlands on last Tuesday. She climbed in her car, gentleman came in, opened the door up, grabbed the purse right off of her front steps, or right out of the front seat of her car, scared her pretty badly. Happy to say that Thursday evening, Officer Ashley Brooks, keeping alert, looking for the vehicle that we thought it was, stopped him at Archer's Mobile, and he was arrested, and we did recover everything of hers.
Outstanding.
Wow, great job. Thank you.
Okay, moving on.
Don't mess with Littleton.
2016 budget guidelines, what I'd like to open, this will be open for the Finance Committee and the School Committee and our board, but Bonnie, if you want to start with everything that you prepared.
Basically, this is just an update that we are at the beginning of the budget process for fiscal 2016. I will be looking to send the budget documents out to the department heads next week. And I'd like to have them back in my office by October 29th so that I can prepare the booklets for the boards to review prior to the November 15th Super Saturday meeting, which will be held at the police station. And I'll be working on the timing of the departments on that for the next week. I am suggesting that we request 2 different budget scenarios again this year. The level staffing, which will be prepared with the same staffing levels that the departments currently have today, with any step increases that might be due, or any contractual increases. And then a mission budget, which would be prepared based on the level that the department head feels would best serve the community. So while I'm not optimistic that we can do, a mission budget, I think it's helpful in identifying what those things are. And in the last fiscal year, we did pick, a very limited number of items, but we did some for the Director of Elder and Human Services staffing, for the Outreach Coordinator, and some targeted increases in the Veterans Benefits Program. And I am inserting also as part of this process that the, both budget scenarios should be prepared being mindful of the Board of Selectmen's goals, so I'll be providing the goals that you recently adopted as part of the packet. So that if there are areas that they can meet to help the board meet their goals, then they should be crafted in that manner. As part of that same process, we will be requesting the capital plan requests for fiscal 2016. For that fiscal year, we do have just over $1.7 million available for capital or one-time items. It's a little higher than last year's. Last year was just over $1.4 million, but we've had a slight reduction, or a reduction in short-term debt service, which is a one-year anomaly. It'll go back to the normal level next year. So that will be available for a one-time type of capital purchase. We do have about $19 million out there in other, capital item, department equipment requests, facility maintenance plan requests, roadway plan. I mean, there's a large list to choose from. So there will be some significant paring down, but there is always a large list to choose from. So that'll be critical over the next few months to make sure that the goals are lined up with what the funding sources get recommended at. And that's all I have for my update.
Anything from this board? Yes. As I was reading this, and it's picking at words a little bit, but nonetheless, you talk about the mission budget, and you use the word sufficient service, and the words you just used, something to the effect that the department head feels will best serve the community, ought to replace that word, because it implies that we have insufficient service, and I'm not sure that's exactly where we are. If we go with a level staffing budget, that may be sufficient for the community.
So Alex, you're saying on the, right on the motion you're talking about?
I would, yeah. And secondly, the other point I wanted to make is, and I made it the other night, I want to make it again, is that we have an excellent relationship with, between all the entities that have to come up with the finances that run this town. But the one element that I would like to see us take another look at as we go through this is trying to have some sort of measure on the efficiency that we have in what we do. And some of that is looking outside of the town to do that, but I think the townspeople expect us to spend the money the best possible way. And while we all work very hard at doing that, somebody sitting back and saying, how well are we doing that, not in terms of numbers, but in efficiency, probably ought to be factored into how we come up with it. That's just my opinion.
Well, Anthony?
Actually, it gets to picking the words that Alex chose to use, sufficient versus best. Level staffing, the presumption is that you may not have sufficient services because of inflation and the like. Would I be fair in that assessment?
I'm not really implying whether it has sufficient service or not.
No, I'm not asking you to do that, but level staffing, to make sure I understand it well, may mean that we are insufficient in the service to the community by saying level staffing.
It could be.
And mission would be to provide sufficiency. To say best, what does that end? Is it best in relative to money available? Is it best available the talent that's out on the playing field, so to speak? Actually, I think the way it's worded, Alex, is, let me play with words here, sufficient. That's what I mean this evening.
Well, I don't know, why don't we envision ourselves standing in front of the town meeting and saying we're going to vote on a budget that is insufficient?
Level
If we
staffing might well be.
if we say level staffing is insufficient, I think the town will decide that. I think we need to empower our department heads to look at what they think currently serves based on the current things that are happening to the town, and that's one of the budgets we look at. And the other budget is strictly one that's based on budget. Level staffing and level funding on the expense side are ways that we contain costs. And, but I don't know that I would say it was insufficient. We're making the judgment that that is the budget, we may make the judgment that's the budget we're going to, and it may be the necessary budget. I don't want to label it insufficient. I want to look at what we can do financially, and what we should be doing is two different things.
I should think by, when you say mission budget, what is the organization's mission? Is there sufficiency to accomplish the mission? And that's very binary. And frankly, I think the five of us here can help make a determination to sit back and wash our hands of it and say, we'll let town meeting figure it out. I think that's part of our responsibility, is to help guide that, help set the scene so that folks can make a good decision. I think where it becomes important is sometimes you see the mission budget, is some folks have seen that as well, the various committees or whatever, the departments are seeking more. By virtue of saying we're doing our mission, you need the money to do the mission. If not, you're cutting something, which is okay, as long as it's acknowledged. And we look at it that way. But to say level staffing, that means with inflation and the like, and then to have a mission budget, and you've done something less than the mission budget, you're not accomplishing your mission completely.
In a mission budget, you will have a different set of priorities than you will in a level staffing budget. In the mission budget, you will look at the challenges you'd like to address. Finances dictate that we may not be able to address all those challenges.
Correct.
My job, I don't want to say whether it's sufficient or insufficient. I want to make that distinction that way, that due to the finances, we may have to go with level staffing, but our department heads and everybody prepares a budget that they think would best serve the community. And whether we will be the ones that make a recommendation, along with the Finance Committee and others on the town meeting floor, but we will be making it based on one of those two things, not sufficiency and insufficiency.
Okay, I don't want to get into word parsing with you this evening, because there's many other things on the business for the docket this evening. Let's just say I disagree with you. If you can't meet your mission, there's an insufficiency someplace.
It depends if you want to embrace the mission or whether it's just what they'd like to do and the town wants to do it or not.
Copy.
Thank you for that discussion.
More than welcome. Wow.
I can see we'll probably have a few more.
Any comments from the school committee?
No, I mean, this is a very familiar process, so we're already thinking about it. In terms of the Super Saturday, we'll be able to be there. I don't know that we'll be as, I don't think it's ever been assumed that we'd be as prepared as the other departments will be, but we'll certainly be able to participate in the degree that we have in the past. Our process is starting right now too. Our budget subcommittee will get off the ground and start thinking about priorities. In terms of the capital project, we'll definitely get going on that. And that's a little bit, easier for us to handle because it's done within the funding mechanism within the town. Whereas some of the other stuff on the operating budget, we have other things we have to think about in terms of Chapter 70 and circuit breaker and our other revolving funds, but we'll get the process underway.
Thanks, Michael.
Yeah,
The facilities plan study that was completed last year, where are we at with the process of calendarizing some of those activities versus the capital budget process here too? Because several of them fall into the capital purchase amounts there.
Sure, the PMBC has been basically assigned the facility plan review, and I know that Selectman Carr is also part of that process and looking at the items annually. So there is a list of items that they'll need to review and prioritize and then make some recommendations on funding.
And I believe we did that right before annual town meeting?
Right.
So, we had a working group, I think PJ represented the schools last year, we had PMBC, Who else from town?
Yeah, his name.
Oh, yeah. Alan was for finance, and we had Bill from,
Bill Cole.
for the town offices on the town side. So as we move forward, that's absolutely a document that's going to come back up, and based on, recommendation of this, the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen on the amount, we'll go through that list again.
Well, mainly just make sure that as we're prepping on our side, we're not putting anything into the cap plan that should be under the facilities plan. And this calendarization of the two will be reconciled at some later date.
Sure, and that's essentially what we did last year, too.
Okay.
I think what's important, though, if there's a deadline by which departments are asked to put in their capital requests, that it would be best, I would think it would be best not for us to assume that if it's, that it's going, that something not going to the capital plan is automatically going into the facilities plan. I think it would be helpful, frankly, I think it would be helpful to have three lists, operating capital and facilities, and to have that as early as possible, so we're working off of the same control sheet, and not assuming that,
Well, part of it goes is-
I wouldn't want to, for example, if the issue is like bleachers or something, that, well, is that a facility, is it a capital? Whatever it is, it ought to be a request, so that it's there, and that we're discussing how to pay for it
That's why I
as
was wondering if the
early as
calendarization of
possible.
those have
Yeah.
been identified. I can imagine maybe like the playground device comes up, which I think might have been in the facility plan, but depending on the recommendations of the principals, it may need to be accelerated. I just want to know when we're going to start
I
dealing with
have a
that particular.
spreadsheet that has all of the items individually listed by year that they were recommended, and I can send that off to you.
Okay, I just
It'll
don't
make it
remember
easier.
seeing the specific one.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, excuse me, does it make sense to ask the PMBC to, I don't know what they have on their plate right now, they may be overburdened, I'm not sure, but if they have time, and they could look through it and at least take a first cut by the November 15th date, that we're going to be reviewing the budgets and the department capital plans, we could consider the PMBC department supporting the facilities capital plan, and then we'd have that much earlier than we had in the past, and then we could review it with,
Even if it's a work in progress.
Oh, no, it will be.
It can help us to make, it can help to make sure that we're not forgetting.
Yeah, no,
Make-
absolutely, and then, to Chuck's point, we could, could all look at it, and, excuse me, all look at it together. Walter.
And not to say whether that's the right or wrong way to do it, it's different, that's all, from what we did the first time around. And that's right, it was the first time, so different may well be better, because there was an amount of money allocated to the facilities
Right.
working group. And then the working group as a total, representing all, so not just the PMBC getting that first hack at it, so to speak, although
Right.
they did do that, actually.
Right, but as I stated in your last meeting, we underfunded it last year.
Yeah.
Sounds like we may be underfunding it again this year. So I think if the PMBC takes an objective view and brings back their list, it may be too long, then we could get the group together if that's the way you guys want to do it. And then you've got, you're not dealing with the entire pie and trying to cut it down. They've already taken a cut, if you will, and prioritized in their mind what should be done. And then if we come back with a number, it should be a little easier. I just feel you'd be dealing a little more with data rather than going in and the way we did last year. And we did what we did because that's how we did it, but I don't think that's necessarily the right way to do it.
But it was very much data-driven, because we
Yeah,
used the
absolutely.
consultants' work that we paid some pretty good money for. I don't remember the name of the company now, and I apologize to you, but we did have, PMBC went out contracting, we had a facilities company come in, prioritize the needs of the town based on the age of the equipment, expected service life of the equipment, and then we categorized the 7 different categories, life and safety, for example, on down to
Right.
feels good. So we had those 7 different categories, and then
Right.
prioritize within, and then as a whole.
Right.
And I'd have to disagree with you, Fred, as far as an underfunding, because as we work through that list, When we categorized life safety on down to feel good, if you want to say that's what it is, playgrounds, doing the tennis courts out back, we were actually able to do that. So the priority list that had been set and the different subsets of the priority list, life safety, security and such, we hit them all. We hit them all. So to say it was underfunded last year, it's really not so much accurate. To say that it will be underfunded in years to come.
It wasn't underfunded by our definition. It was underfunded by the recommendation of the committee of that group that we paid a lot of money to come in and read our watch and tell us what time it was. We did not.
I'll give you an example, and I'll refer to this as a life safety priority issue. The fire alarm system in the historical building was listed as old and needs to be replaced. It's still functional. Fire department has no issues with it. So do we replace something that doesn't need to be replaced for the sake of replacing it?
That's very.
So there's a lot of that on there, and that's where this group really had a chance to take a look at.
You're absolutely right, but the first year was relatively small.
No, we did 2 years last year. We did 2 fiscal years last year.
You did what we were missing in the first year. This next year, if you look at it, is significantly more, and the year after that is significantly more than that.
And again, I think the working group, as we look at it, there will be stuff on that list that is still functioning, that doesn't have to be replaced. So the $5 million for next year may not be, and I'm just using hypothetical numbers here.
Well, it's certainly not going to be $400,000
No.
next year.
Well, we don't know. We got to take a look at it and have that group go through along with the PMBC to put that in. So, after doing a 2-year assignment that we had last year for $453,000, we did a lot of work.
Yeah, absolutely, we
did a lot of work.
It's better than nothing. But I believe, as I stated, and selectmen in their infinite wisdom can do as they so choose. But I believe that have the PMBC take a run through it, come back with their recommendations, and then we take a look at it.
And they were at the table.
It's no problem.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one more thing back to the mission budgets, and I don't care about the wording, quite frankly. But to me, one of the things that comes out of that is you might reprioritize. If we just say level staffing, then we're going to do the same thing last year we did this year. What we want to do is say the mission statements, these are some other things we might want to think about doing. It may be add-ons, but it may be instead of as well. And unless you have those conversations, then you just keep doing the peanut butter stuff. So to me, that's the key thing that comes out of that. And then FinCom also goes through and does one-on-ones with all the departments, just so we can understand in even more detail what they're thinking and so on. But anyway, I just want to add that to the mission statement.
James Lay?
Yeah, just adding on to what Betsy said, I wonder if, I know we have to start somewhere, but whether the notion of as a starting place, level staffing, puts in a prefix as to what our priority is, and it's a kind of an across-the-board, everybody's treated the same. And I would encourage the selectmen, as you guys set your priority, and let the departments know that in a given year, different departments may have a higher demand than others. And, hope that this scenario doesn't lead to just treating everything across the board. I'd encourage you to really find out what the priorities are within your department and give that directive. I don't know what your, apologize, I don't know what your goals were for the year, but I hope one of them might have been, as we discussed earlier, a reconciliation of what we know to be a structural operating deficit going forward in the context of this year's operating budget. And I would encourage you as well to make that a priority too, that we start to close that gap in the upcoming FY 16 budget. Make some measures to it rather than just treating it as a an entity unto itself. I mean, there's no sense in continuing to make projections that show operational deficits if we don't actually do anything about addressing them. So I think that
rather than any specific program, I would encourage you to take those two approaches.
Thank you. Board? Do we actually need a motion to that?
Yeah, if you could adopt the motion as presented, then we'll have the direction to give to the departments. If you're, assuming you want to do the two options of level staffing and admission budget.
That's what I was reading about, we'll look and read the motion.
All right. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to request two department budget scenarios be prepared for FY 2016, mindful of the Selectmen's adopted goals. 1, level staffing budget prepared with the same staffing levels as to FY 2015, inclusive of increases to support only any steps that may be due. Expenses to be level funded at the amount of the FY 2015 budget. 2, mission budget. Budget prepared with the staffing levels as the department head appointing authority feels necessary to best serve the community. And leave it at that. If they don't tell us, we don't know.
Motion's been made.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Thank you. Okay, number 5. I'm going to let Keith take over, but during the week, we had the pleasure, and Jim, you came to it too, possibility of a very nice company moving into town, and I think it's important because it's in the area of town that we're all concerned with over and over. But back in my days, we called the Sandville property, it became Middlesex property and so forth. And in that area, we had FIBA move in, which is a nice, clean business. And right now, we have the possibility of another company moving in, and that's what we're going to be discussing. And we'll have a little, I think, a slideshow presentation also. Keith, if you want to take it from here and to introduce people.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. And actually, I think it's a great segue from our previous discussion, because if I could come up with a theme for what I think this next agenda item does, it is to help the town address its structural deficit. And there are two ways to do that. One is to simply cut costs. The other is to, as our Economic Development Committee has advocated that we do, is to take a look at the tax base, particularly the commercial tax base that does not produce a net cost to the town for the school system, and to look at intelligent growth and development for the community that makes good use of property, that creates a good neighbor for those who live nearby, and creates an absolute net positive for the town's bottom line. So we've been fortunate enough to have some preliminary conversations with the folks that are here to talk to us tonight. And we're going to hear a presentation about a request for a tax increment financing agreement. The company, the Potpourri Group, is looking to relocate to Littleton if we can come to agreement on a TIF in order to preserve that opportunity. The goal tonight is to insert an article on the special town meeting warrant. The specific business terms would be negotiated promptly after tonight and prior to town meeting, so that when we go to the voters on November 12th, we have the business terms worked out and we can explain what it all means. But I have to say, it's a very exciting prospect. It's a site that I'm sure many know. It's distribution center circle. It's off of Air Road. It's more like it's behind our most recent TIF property, which is the FIBA Technologies at 53 Air Road. And just like with FIBA and with IBM, and others, that those are businesses that chose to locate in Littleton because Littleton was offering tax increment financing agreements. And so Potpourri Group has discovered us because we're on the radar screen, and we're happy to hear from their team tonight. I'll turn it over to Lynn to lead it off, and Taris, and just to walk us through. And we have a short presentation that they'll go through. But thanks very much for coming here tonight.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Lynn Tokarczyk, Government Incentives Consultant. I'm representing the Potpourri Group. I'm here this evening with Taris Kowalchin, who is the Vice President of Operations for Potpourri Group. Also here this evening is Kim Long, who is the CFO for Potpourri Group. We also have Jeff O'Neill is here, who from Condyne, who is he is the president of Condyne and the property owner, the developer at that particular parcel. So we have a brief presentation, basically in 3 segments. Who is Potpourri? What are their proposed expansion plans? And then their intent to apply for incentives. So I'll turn it right over to Taris. Thank you.
Okay, great. First of all, Keith, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for being
And the
here.
Board of Selectmen. We had an opportunity here to just have some preliminary discussions, and when we say brief presentation, I got to just keep my eye on the clock, because saying my name takes more than 15 minutes. But let me go by this, and for everybody, I'm going to keep my back here, so I don't want to put my back to anybody. Plus, I can see the screen on the clock very easily this way. But let me tell you about Potpourri. Potpourri was started back in 1963 in Massachusetts. It's a catalog company. It's progressed and reinvented itself in e-commerce, as we've all heard about e-commerce. We have over 15 brands for the company right now. We go everywhere from home decor to apparel to bedding to sheeting to gifts, toys, pet accessories as well. Now, for those of you familiar with some of our brands, we also help with equestrians. We have a lot of opportunities for people that like horses, have farming, so we go the broad gambit. That's why the name Potpourri. It's not because we sell potpourri, we have a potpourri of products. Okay? So again, we were founded in 1963. Our corporate headquarters is in North Billerica. We've just moved there about 2 years ago as well. We've done it again because of growth and expansion. We moved to about an 80,000 square foot corporate office there. Prior to that, we were in Chelmsford, so didn't move very far, but we were able to go find some nice property and move there as well. Currently, our fulfillment centers are in Northbridge as well as in Maine. I'll talk a little bit about the difference between the fulfillment center versus a distribution center, because I think that's going to be really germane to this conversation, to let you know what we do as opposed to just having a lot of trucks running through neighborhoods. Like I said, we have 15 brands and we continue to grow. Just last week, we finalized a deal on another acquisition out of Denver, so we look to bring that business over as well to here, as well as the main business in all those areas. We have over 50,000 different products that we have at any given time. So again, it's a true potpourri of products that could go, probably most of you see right now, so we have a little bit of everything for everybody as well in here. Give you a scope of what we do. One of the core businesses are mailing catalogs. We mail over 250 million catalogs in a year. So that's a lot of catalogs, and probably I'd be venture to guess many of the folks in this room right now probably do see our catalogs and see some of our products and hopefully buy some of our products. That's one of them right there. You can personalize anything for your pet, if you look over here, or anything else that we have. Okay? We've been ranked in the top 500. We're ranked right now 141 in internet retailers. So we've been a player in this. We continue to grow. We continue to acquire organizations. And we do about 5.5 million shipments for any given year to consumers throughout the United States and internationally. Okay? Okay. Those of you can have an opportunity to take a look at some of these catalogs up here. Probably familiar with some of them, and these are what we do send out and current brands we have and continue to grow and send those out. So we do all our photography, by the way, in North Billerica. We have our own professional studio there. So we do bring in, be it pets for, in the company of dogs catalog, so we have those photography. Actual, in the catalog, you actually see names of people that bring in their pets, so you see the names. All the pictures are shot on site and sent out to, to the publishers to print from there. So it's all done locally in Massachusetts. Okay, again, a little smattering of some of our products. They go from apparel to some of the home decor, jewelry, Western wear, as you see in the boots. So, again, a little bit of everything for everyone. Okay, we're going to talk about this site, and I guess, let me start by saying, right now we have 300,000 square feet in Northbridge, another approximately 90,000 square feet in Maine, and about another 60,000 square feet, that's in Colorado, in the Denver area that we just acquired. The goal here is to create a fulfillment center large enough, 450,000 square feet, so we can centralize not only just the fulfillment, but also a data center and a call center in these operations. Now, what's different between a data center versus a distribution center? First of all, you're probably familiar with these distribution centers that have a ton of trucks just coming in, clogging up the roads. That's not what we do. Our packages are small. They weigh about 3.5 pounds on average per package. We only have approximately 3 or 4 trucks that come in, bringing in our product, and maybe have 4 or 5 trucks leaving in the course of a day. That's it, and that's in our peak season. So there's not a lot of traffic. We run 2 shift operations. Our first shift starts at 7 a.m. in the morning, finishes around 5:30, so again, not right around a time of congestion. And then our last shift leaves around 12 midnight in these operations. Okay, so that's really what we do and how we do things. We've been growing. One of the things we're looking at while we're expanding is we just signed an agreement with the Postal Service. It's a national services agreement. They're very rare and hard to come by. And what this does is, working in partnership with the Postal Service, they allow us to actually sell more product by printing more catalogs. One of the features that we do as a company is we take whatever proceeds we get from that and reinvest it in the business. So they saw that as a win-win, because again, the more customers we have, the more packages we mail, the more packages go through the Postal Service, which go to the consumers throughout. So again, it's a process that really works for both of us, and this is a long-term project that we've signed with the Postal Service going forward. So in order to take advantage of this, we need to have a larger facility to accommodate the growth that we're anticipating. So where does this come down to? We did hire a distribution consulting company. We have a national real estate company. We had done a search throughout the United States, what some locations may be, what towns may exist. We also came back and said, what can exist in the local area? We are local. Our preference, and our members of the management staff went to our board and said, our preference is to stay in Massachusetts if at all possible. So they've given us the okay and said, okay, find us a place, convince us that Massachusetts is the right place for this organization. We think we found something in the Littleton area, working with Jeff and his organization. We think we can make it work, but it's, we just need to make sure it's the right fit for both of us, to make sure it works for both of us. Okay, just to give a perspective, and some of you may know where this is at, but if you see that, well, I can't get over there, but right kind of where it says 3 Distribution Drive, that's about where 495 is. And this road right around here is about 1.5 miles off of 495. Okay, so that gives you a perspective of where this location is, and this kind of gives you a perspective where this site is undeveloped right now. There is an existing distribution center here, car lot there, another location right there. So our goal is really to build something right in a vacant land that exists today and needs to be developed. Okay, so talk a little bit about this. We're looking to construct a 450,000 square foot facility that will house our data center, fulfillment, and call center in operations. The project's estimated to be about $45 million. That will come primarily from the actual construction costs, and another $10 million on our end to put fulfillment equipment there, to put some of the state-of-the-art equipment inside this facility, so we could, again, fulfill all our orders. And again, We only have one location, we're looking at doing this, so we're looking at putting at one location, all products, all those 50,000 items, all 5.5 million packages will be shipped from one location. We certainly would like to have it continue to be in Massachusetts and to be in Littleton as well. Okay? So this gives you a little different perspective. Not to get into too many of the details, but it's really broken down in two areas. One of the areas is, I guess I can do this way. Technology is wonderful. This is going to be where a lot of the bulk product will be stored at. It'll be all coming in from here. We have plenty of parking that we've built for all our people right here in this existing location. The product will come in here. We transfer here where all the individual products are picked and shipped out here with trucks leaving and going out that way. So again, gives you a perspective. It comes in, stored, and it moves out. All small packages delivered by the local post office right to individual persons' homes. Okay? Give you a sense of how many people we employ. Currently, we have 227 full-time positions that we look to retain to bring with us if at all possible. We'll do everything we can when we do so by putting some kind of shuttle service from their existing locations if need be. Again, whatever it takes to keep, we have a good dedicated staff of employees that have been trained, and we'd like to retain them as much as possible. In addition to that, we're looking at bringing in 130 new positions over the next 5 years. That's through the acquisitions, this national services agreement that we've developed. So all these type of positions, we're looking at adding to what we already have and look at an area that can support that and grow with us as well. Again, as you can imagine, this is a seasonal business. We do have a lot of catalogs. A lot of these are gift products people have. So during this time of the year, starting in September through December, we do employ another 250 full-time seasonal positions that we bring in to help support all these businesses. Call center, warehouse, you can see the areas, fulfillment operations, information management, and just office and management and administration staff. So we do employ all those locations, or all those vocations, I should say. Okay?
I'm just going to talk a little bit about the economic impact. As Taris mentioned, this is a 450,000 square foot building, an estimated $45 million project, and that certainly is going to generate new tax revenue in the community, as well as new jobs. But on the economic impact side, it's also going to be very compelling as to what all these jobs are going to be doing, the economic impact and that multiplier effect for the small businesses. Hotels, we learned the other day that you have a potential new hotel slated, so the company's very excited to hear about that. The company will be spending, and their employees, at delis, restaurants, corporate caterers, personal care, auto repair shops, and then your typical industrial services. We know that Littleton has adopted a meals tax, a hotel tax as well, so that should be some potential additional new revenue coming into the community. So, as well as the economic impact, the company is also very focused on community involvement. They have a history of supporting local programs, and that's really key. The more I've learned more about the company and all of their activities, I'll let Tara speak to that. But they're embedded in the local communities that they reside in. So, Tara, I'll let you speak on that.
A number of areas we participate in. The local police department has a golf outing, not because I'm a golfer. It has nothing to do with it, trust me. Come on, guys. But we've been participating in that for many years with them. There's a road race that goes through that whole area of Whitensville and Northbridge. What we do is actually on Saturdays have our employees come up and set up watering stations that goes right by there. So again, can help the people there. We do a lot of local fundraising for local events for individuals that may have had issues. So we have an internship program primarily out of the Worcester area and there, where we hire people to work on there so they can learn a vocation, learn a trade, come in there. Active involved in Chamber of Commerce. We're involved in the Chamber of Commerce at our corporate area down and where our warehouse is. I've been part of the Chamber of Commerce and actually an officer of the Chamber of Commerce personally. So again, we believe in getting involved in the community and everything it provides us.
Right. So,
Can I interrupt 1 minute?
Sure.
Sure.
By law, I have to open a public hearing. I'll read the hearing, I'll postpone it, and let you finish and get the board to ask you some questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. Public hearing, road layout, New Estate Road, Nagog Hill Road. Littleton Board of Selectmen will conduct a public hearing on Monday, September 22nd, 2014, at 8 p.m. at Littleton Town Offices, Room 103, 37 Shattuck Street, Littleton, Mass., pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 82, on the proposed layout of the following public ways. New Estate Road is shown as a plan entitled Street Acceptance Plan of New Estate Road, Littleton, Massachusetts, dated September 4th, 2014, and prepared by Green International Affiliates Incorporated. And Nagog Hill Road is shown on a plan entitled Street Acceptance Plan of Nagog Hill Road, Littleton, Massachusetts, dated September 4th, 2014, and prepared by Green International Affiliates Incorporated. Copies of the plans are on file at the Selectman's office and available online at www.littletonma.org. All interested parties are invited to attend. Littleton Board of Selectmen, Joseph Knox, Chair. Do I need a motion to
Recess the hearing until
Recess.
completion of this agenda item.
Make a motion to recess the current hearing until this agenda item is complete.
Second.
Motion been made and second to recess this hearing until the current topic is done. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Back to you. Okay. Like I said, I'm watching.
That's okay.
Let me make this quick then. Okay, that's the end.
Yeah, that's the right, that's the right slide. Okay. That's the list.
So what we're here to do is, as I said, you know, Ken and I are part of the officers of the organization. We report to a board. We have to give the board a compelling reason why, number one, we need to go ahead, and why we want to stay in Massachusetts, and why Littleton's the right location. As we said, this is a major undertaking. A lot of cash will be done here. We're moving from an area that, quite frankly, is a low-cost area right now, in their property taxes, et cetera. So there are going to be increased costs, the automation, just a change in the environment that we're going to have to do with that. So what we want to do is convince the board that this is the right location. We believe a tax incentive from yourselves will make this a feasible and sustainable proposition for both ourselves and yourselves. So that's what we're here to ask to take to the next step.
and just to follow up with that, so the company has, as Keith mentioned, the company's interested in applying for the tax incentives. They have submitted an incentives intent letter, and they're planning on submitting a TIF proposal letter this week in order to achieve having discussions within the next couple of weeks, and then hopefully get into the town meeting in November. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
This was, it was explained that you're sort of on a fast timeframe. And so it just happened that they were aware that we had a November town meeting. They understood that our warrant closes this Friday, and that even have the opportunity to negotiate with us over a TIF agreement. They would need to come forward tonight. There's no business proposal in front of us tonight. That will be the next step, but this is the placeholder to allow us to have the ability to, if we work out a deal, to bring it to town meeting for approval. But we're, and we wanted to bring them forward as soon as possible.
Questions from the board?
No, just a quick comment from my side. I mean, this sounds great to me. Really well done on your presentation. I like the fact that you're going to create jobs and that you're so interested in being supportive of the community. I think that's really important. Truck traffic was on my mind, so you kind of explained that. That also sounds good. And I have one of the cutest cats known to man if you help with, if you need help with those advertisements.
I think we'll wait, my comments will be about the financial impact, but, at a later meeting, we'll talk about that, I'm sure. So, this is just to get it on the warrant.
It's the meet and greet.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
McCurdy?
Yes, I'm really pleased that you're doing this. That piece of land has been, to say the least, underutilized for quite a period of time. And it is this program that attracts you here. It is what attracted IBM here and others here. It shows that we want to bring quality business into town. I think you're a quality business, and I think you should come to town.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you for the presentation. Appreciate you all taking the time this evening. You mentioned Billerica, and you even mentioned that it's a lower cost in many ways, the tax rates and the like. What causes or prevents you, perhaps, from expansion in Billerica?
Well, let me clarify. If I said Millbrook, I apologize. That's where our corporate office is. Our fulfillment center is in Northbridge, in the Whitensville area. But to answer your question directly, we have looked there. We actually pursued it, and some of the sites we found were not, just couldn't be built on. We need something fairly large. It's not many places that have that in the state of Massachusetts. You can find them in the Midwest. You can find them, in other parts of the country, but it's very hard to find a tract of land that large that's buildable, also that can sustain that kind of workforce.
Just early stages, and I know you have to get going on this, but I think a lot of us that have been able to talk to you are thrilled at the opportunity for that land use. We all know that from what you've explained, it is going to be a clean outfit with truck traffic's going to be very limited as opposed to something else that might go in there. So hopefully everything works out. We can work out this agreement because we'd like to have you in town.
That'd be great.
Motion, please.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to insert onto the warrant for November 12, 2014 special town meeting, an article authorizing a tax incentive financing agreement for 3 distribution center circle between the town, Potpourri Group, Inc. and Mass Littleton Land LLC, with the terms of said TIF agreement to be subject to recommendation by the Board of Selectmen.
Moved in second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for coming in tonight.
Really
Thank
appreciate
you
it.
for your support.
Thank you. Nice to see you, and we'll be in touch. Thank you very much. Look forward to this.
Thank you.
Lots of catalog.
I love to hear that.
Yeah, please.
Make a motion to reopen the public hearing for the road layout, North State Road and Nagog Hill Road.
Moved in second to reopen the public hearing. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, for the audience, New Estate Road and Nagog Hill Road, both scheduled to be upgraded by the town. Doing research on those 2 roads, even though the town has taken care of them, we can find no public records where the town has ever voted to accept New Estate Road or Nagog Hill Road. Before we can proceed any further, it has to go to town meeting to approve the layouts. And the layouts is simply as the deeds state right now. It doesn't talk about any of the improvements that might be made, or that'll come up later on. This is just to get the town meeting so we can have it approved. We can't work, the town cannot work in those roads until they're accepted by the town. So that's what this public hearing is about. We're not here tonight to talk about this section meeting this or that section meeting that. It's just the first step to work on these roads, that they have to be accepted at town meeting. Board members?
And we do have a recommendation from the planning board, as is required by law for road acceptance. And the planning board has, in the interest of the town, voted to recommend the acceptance of the layouts of these 2 roads as we understand them to be. As far as we can tell, there may be other roads that have been in existence since 1846 that we've treated as public ways and that we've spent public funds on. However, We have a master list of such roads. However, we are not in all cases able to find the corresponding vote of town meeting where the town actually voted to lay them out and accept them. We've had, as the chair has indicated, an exhaustive search of the records in the Registry of Deeds. We are aware that Nagog Hill was also called Cash Road at some point. And I appreciate the information that folks brought forward. That has not allowed town council to render a conclusive opinion, though, that the road has in fact been laid out by town meeting before. So where we're talking about spending $1 million or more of public funds, including state Chapter 90 monies, to improve these two roads, we wanted to take the step, which will now, I'm afraid, will become a standard practice, that we will make sure that we have the definitive layout of the public way before we're expending major sums on a road project. But the first two out of the box are the two that are the subject of this public hearing, New Estate Road and Nagog Hill Road. We have had the engineers prepare plans which essentially reflect what and I had sent copies of those plans out to all of the abutters, but just as a flavor, and we'll take Nagog Hill Road here, that the layout of the road as shown on the plan corresponds with what individual deeds say. The deed for your property, the plans that are referred to for all of the abutting properties up and down, that has been sort of pieced together in this master layout plan, which we will be bringing to town meeting to adopt this, what we have the common understanding is the public way. That's what we will have town meeting to officially vote to accept as a public way. That, as the chair says, then becomes step one of a at least two-step process. It is our intention to bring forward design plans that will be dealing with all of the affected abutters on, to bring forward a design plan that we put out to bid and improve the road. Where those design plans say in order to have the right width of the road, to have it be a safe width at all places, if we need to increase what the layout of the public way is, maybe 3 feet here or 2 feet there, or to take an odd triangle of property or something, so that the layout, the public layout supports the plan that we'd like to engineer. That will be a subject of considerable individual discussions with the affected property owners, so that we can reach agreement on what the layout should look like in front of your property, and so that when we're putting that project together, it's one that the abutters are in support of. All we're prepared to do tonight, and for this November's town meeting, though, is to essentially go back and accept what we thought we'd accepted before, but we don't have proof that we did. So for $1 million, it's worth per road, at least, it's worth taking that step. Step two, our target is for the May annual town meeting, and we will try to work over the course of the coming months to work with our engineers and highway and with the affected property owners to see if there are further changes to this layout that we need to make in order to make the road improvements that you'd like to see. So it's going to be a cooperative process. I think we're going to be spending a lot of time together on this in the coming months, but it's our goal to number one, arrive at our common understanding of what the layout is, and then number two, to come up with the plan for improvements. So so tonight we're just heading to the November town meeting to accept the existing layout.
Board members, before we open it up?
I have no comments, it's explained well.
All right, I'll open up to the public. If I call on you, please give your name and your address, please.
Jerry Portalante, New State Road, I'm also on the planning board. What's the width in that layout?
It varies.
So that is to the existing road?
It's not to the existing layout of the road, it's to what the plans on file in the registry say where the road is, and that may vary from from lot to lot.
So what's the width on that layout? For New Estate Road?
It's a variable width, it doesn't have a uniform, like 40-foot right-of-way.
Because the plan has 9-foot easement on either side, right? So if you're not at least
No.
40
No.
feet for the sidewalk, yeah,
No.
No.
It's within the layout.
it's gonna stay inside that layout?
It's the public, it's a two-step process, and really, step one is for us to certify, as a matter of law, that what these individual property plans say is the public way is in fact the public way. We know going into it that that is not, that layout definition will not solve the problems that we're going to need to solve to reconstruct the road. And in some cases, the layout of, as it is shown in the plan, doesn't even match what the pavement is, the layout of the pavement. They are not the same in all cases.
So, bear with me, so if it's in front of my house, it's a 16-foot layout right now.
No.
Right. Let's just say it was. Well, how do you pick up the other feet?
Are you referring to what's there for pavement right now?
No, the layout. The layout on that plan.
On the plan.
And measure the layout on that plan, and you go to the proposed design. What's the difference?
The proposed design, they worked within what the layout was. On New Estate Road, there was no takings required at this time for what they proposed. It's a variable width that goes from, I don't exactly know, but it's wider out at the cemetery end, and I think it's mostly a minimum of 40 foot, and then it goes to 50 feet at the far end by the old sand mill property.
So it's not gonna pinch in to the existing pavement.
It's what?
It won't pinch in the existing pavement. In other words, you could have the road could be 22 feet wide, the layout could still be 40 feet.
Correct.
That's what I'm asking.
Yes.
Jared Elpiori, New Estate Road. I think that answers one question I had. I noticed I'm on 59 and Phil's my next door neighbor, Paul's right across the road. I noticed on the plan with a good magnifying glass, a 38-foot tie line, yet the road's only 24 feet wide by my tape measure. So what you guys did is you actually went to the old plans, tried to figure out what bounds are where, and that's how you got the extra space. What might be interesting to some of the landowners here, if it's easy for the engineers to do, is overlay where the existing road is on top of this,
See what it looks like.
We can have the engineer do that. Sure.
yeah.
We're actually, I think we've got a preliminary plan that we're, because that was the question we had, where does the pavement width match up against what the legal description is? And we can certainly share that.
Mr. Glavy?
Paul Levy, 54 New Estate Road. I do support the paving, and I also anticipate the sidewalking that'll follow and live on the side of the road that the sidewalk would logically go toward the school. So I've been anticipating that for years. Questions raised here, similar to what Jerry was just mentioning, and the other Jerry a moment ago. The road layout that we were all mailed suggests that anything suggests that anything more than what's already paved now, there's still the town has some right to. I think that right occurs with the acceptance of the road, and with that, there's an element of taking involved, and that subject really hasn't been discussed. The simple fact of anything that's not already developed has never been accepted by the town. But that really only comes into play, for my personal interest, in light of the actual design plan. Now, I understand the design plan exists, but we weren't mailed copies of that. And to think of this in terms of, well, just say yes to this part, and then that'll come later, I'm not sure that's the case if we are indeed losing property rights or property value by allowing the road acceptance that would enable a plan that already exists that we haven't had a chance to review. So I think that we really ought to get all the issues on the table at the same time, address the issue of taking, when the taking actually begins, and what the plan that's been anticipated looks like.
Thank you.
If
Mr.
you
Clyde.
took Mr. Glady's property and measured from his deed, he would own a certain size property, and that's where the property line at the edge of the street. He does not own to the pavement or anything like that, and that's what the engineers have laid out, is what all the other properties that abut the road own to, and that what gets the variable width paved, layout, not pavement. You can't assume that the roads where the pavement is the actual layout.
Charles Duncan, 7 Nagel Hill Road. I like some of the other things they said about overlaying on the plan where the road is now. But you alluded earlier that there might be some number of other problems. I'm just thinking perhaps drainage or some such. Do you at this time have any idea what kinds of other problems there might be other than the exact placement and width of the road? Do you have any of that you could
They
share?
haven't really
All right.
done any design
They haven't,
work.
no. And we didn't have them go into that level of detail once we saw that, once this issue of where's the town meeting vote accepting this, so we said, stop, let's make sure that we're legal, and then we will come back to those issues. And we will certainly plan to spend a lot of quality time on those issues with all of the affected properties, with the neighbors this winter.
Understand, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mary Fuhrer, 91 Nagog Hill. I think I'm just looking for information at this point, and I think it reflects something that you've already mentioned, which is clarification. If you vote to accept this as a town road, at the time that you vote to accept it, do we, as abutters, also see that 9 or 10-foot easement that accompanies most town roads? Are we, at the time of acceptance, giving that up?
Well,
I'm just not sure.
Yeah, it's our opinion or not, because we're relying on your deeds and plans to create our plan of what the layout looks like. We're not, we are relying on the plans for the deeds that you all have. We haven't created another one. We have scrupulously gone through each of your deeds and the plans that are attached to them, and are depicting those on this composite plan, and we're saying that's the public way, as we'd like it to be defined, and which we understand it to be defined, is as each and every one of your deeds and plans say it is. We're not, in this level at least, we're not looking to encroach on any property, any private property, in order to say what the layout is. That's not to say we won't need to do that in the next level if it's not wide enough at some point. And we would only do that if we reach agreement with the affected property owner. And so if the, it's not wide enough at a particular juncture, and we need to grab another foot or two in order to make it wider and safer, then we would need to reach agreement with the affected property owner about taking that. Frankly, we don't like to take, we like to enter into agreements. Because taking is not a final act, it's the first act. What we would hope to do is to be able to reach agreement with each and every affected property owner on what the change would be. But that's in step 2, in shooting for the May 2015 town
That's
meeting.
helpful, that makes sense, and that's really helpful, and then perhaps I misunderstood. I thought that all accepted townways had a certain amount of easement right-of-way that had to be provided to the town for future improvements. Am I wrong?
Not if we were going by current subdivision rules, but we're just, we're looking at what happened prior to 1846, and and we're just, the best we can do is to piece together what your deeds say the road is, and that's our starting point.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Lisa?
Lisa Bloom, 1 Uplands Road. So I think the answer that still hasn't come is, this proposed road, the plans that you have, how, and I know they're based off of all of the properties and what they believe the road should be. How that actually maps out to what we visually see as a paved road that we've been used to, and what our properties look like up to that paved road up until now, and then how that actually then superimposes on the plans which have been created for each of these roads for the improvement process. So I think what the problem is that we're not getting a clear picture of what we have today, what it really means based on what you've surveyed, I assume just through the paperwork, but have you physically, I know they've surveyed the roads,
Yeah.
but
They're-
whether or
they're-
not they've
yeah.
determined that the actual pavement, how closely it maps to what this proposal is.
We have plans for New Estate Road in Eagle Arch Way. I don't know that I've seen them for Nagog Hill Road.
Design work on
Yeah.
Nagog at all.
Yeah, there's, for New Estate, there was some level of design work. For Nagog Hill Road, there is not for the future. We can, though, share with you, and I know that because our engineers have developed it, we can share with you a better representation of where's the existing pavement and superimpose that onto this plan. I'm not sure we can do it on like an aerial map as well. We have some GIS capability in town. We can do our best to try to provide those illustrations.
Because I assume that plan, the proposed improvement plan, was based off of the current paved area. Is that correct? Because you're telling us that there was no actual road on file. Is that, I mean, I'm a little, I'm trying to make sure I.
Defer to Jim on that.
The pavement currently is, it goes from 28 feet to 24 feet to 26 feet to 22 feet. So the pavement is all variable with pavement as well, but everything that they put in the conceptual design fits within what is on the survey plan. There's no takings on New Estate at all. There's, their conceptual design has some alignment changes, the pavement moves a little bit, but it makes the pavement width a uniform width. I think it's 22 or 24 feet, but it still fits within that proposed layout. There's no takings proposed on.
And we can certainly get you those illustrated plans that would show
It'll fit within the
this
pictures that we're looking
legal definition where the pavement is, and at least for New Estate preliminarily, what the improvements would be, because we have
But is
those.
it believed that the plan actually shows pretty closely to what's currently paved, or we don't know that?
It on New Estate, it's pretty close.
Question in the back? Question in the back, no? There's a hand up, but
Hi, Bobby Pauley, 174 New Estate. So you said the proposed line for the road, but what about the proposed road, line for sidewalk? How much would you be going into the even side of the road for that?
It stays within the what's gonna be accepted. I mean, that's what the property that we have to work with. So there's a misconception that we're taking people's property in their front yards. It's still what was thought to be town property, and now we're just gonna use what we thought was rightfully ours, I guess, until we accept it.
So how many feet would that be?
Maybe none.
Approximately?
It may be none. If you pull out all of your deeds and you go from the back of the parcel of your property to the front, and you put your stakes in on your road, and the guy across the street does the exact same thing, and the existing road sits in between the spaces where your property ends and across your neighbor gets it. The road could be 40 feet wide, it could be 15 feet wide, but the road where it is now is going to travel in the same distance where the new one will.
Okay.
It shows where your property line
Any
is.
statements made through the board, please?
Oh, sorry.
Yes, I think what the problem here is everybody thinks their property line goes up to the road. It doesn't. I went out, I looked at my markers, and on the front of my road, my property ends about 15 feet inside, away from the edge of the road. And this is where people are getting confused. They don't understand that the property doesn't necessarily go all the way up to the edge of the road. You have to get out your deed, a measuring tape, and measure. And that will tell you where your property ends. And where your property ends, the town takes over. And it was my understanding that this meeting was just to get to the point where we could approve New Estate Road as a town road. Because as it stands right now, it's not a town road. And all we're trying to do is say, yes, we want it as a town road, so they can work. And if it's not a town road, we're responsible for the repairs.
My name is Joe O'Leary. I live at 14 Nagog Hill Road. I'm new to the town, but I think I understand what's going on. The town can't maintain or do improvements to an unaccepted street.
True.
And although the town has maintained the street, is it the town's intention to stop maintaining and to not do any improvements unless it is an accepted way?
Well, we certainly hope we don't reach that question. But it's the town's intent not to spend $1 million on going forward with the road improvement programs that we've announced until after we've taken this careful step of actually accepting the roads. So I'd like to be positive about it.
In other words, yes.
Well,
I'll start clapping.
Anyone else? Pleasure of the board.
Move to close the hearing? Second it?
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to close the hearing. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, now, what is the pleasure? We'll read the motion if you're ready. Yep.
All right, I'll move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 82, to approve the layouts of New Estate Road and Nagog Hill Road as public ways, as shown on the street acceptance plans dated September 4, 2014, and prepared by Green International Affiliates, Inc., as recommended by the Planning Board pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 41, subsection 81I, or is that an L? That's an L. I, an I, 81I, to recommend acceptance thereof by the November 12, 2014 special town meeting, and to file said plans with the town clerk.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you.
thank you. And we'll get more information out to all the affected property owners. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
We open this up, do you want to speak on?
I'll speak first and then call on Michael.
At the same time, you want to talk about the idea that in the background, the town knowing that this could pass, that would...
Yes, that it's a twofer.
We'll wait till you get back. That's
Oh, I understand that, yeah. I think we'll be looking for time, Jimmy, for common understanding of what's the right path.
That's actually dirt.
Let me go check on him. We got lost. Guess so.
What else did I bring? It was a pen. My pen! Look at my pen back. Projectile.
Crunching candy again?
Oh, replay.
Okay, moving on. Subject number 7 tonight is turf fields. We've had a petition that's been signed by, I think, 145 signatures to talk about turf fields at 2 different locations in Littleton. Tonight, we're looking at the possibility of putting that, well, it will be on town meeting, and this is just a discussion. We're going to turn over to you in a second. Keith, you want to follow up on this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, we're going to hear a presentation from the citizens group that is presenting a petitioned article to town meeting seeking design funding for turf fields. Just as some preliminary remarks, we want to say that we appreciate the efforts of that group who have gone to a number of town boards to brief them. I think you started with the Finance Committee, briefed the School Committee, the Board of Selectmen, Planning Board, a number of town boards to present some preliminary information about what your group is seeking. The town has been provided thus far with a draft of the warrant article which the group is proposing to insert by this Friday's deadline for a funding request that would come before the voters at our special town meeting on Wednesday, November 12th. So to answer the question of whose proposal is it, it will be a voter petition. It's a request of a group of voters, of more than 100 voters is required to get an article on special town meeting warrant. Mindful that the dollar amount could be as much as $200,000, and I think we'll want to talk about, we've received a couple of proposals from engineering firms, one that's closer to 200, one that's not 100,000. The Permanent Municipal Building Committee, to my understanding, will be reviewing those proposals. The reason they do, by the way, is that if town meeting votes to fund the project, our rules say that it's a construction project, a building project, that the PMBC would oversee. So they're the group that would look at even the design request and to be in charge of the project if town meeting funds it and it goes forward. And that's how any of the building projects that could pass a town meeting go. Mindful that the cost of the design phase could be on the order of $200,000, and because the number of town boards had been briefed on the project, the other reason, and perhaps the main reason why the selectmen have invited a number of other boards to come here tonight for sort of a summit meeting on the turf fields design request, is so that we could try to have a common understanding of if town meeting were inclined to approve the spending, they were inclined to approve funding of $200,000 for this, what's the best way for the town to fund that? And I had the discussion with the petitioner, Michael Crory. I said, I do want to see what that article looks like, because if it's written the wrong way, then the cost would simply go to add the amount of taxes that they would just raise and appropriate. It would add to taxation. Well, Michael knows what he's doing. He's got plenty of contacts and resources in the community. So the article, the very thoughtful article that was written, provides maximum flexibility for what the funding sources would be. It would allow either raising, appropriating, transferring from other funds, or borrowing. And so what I wanted to do, and made the specific suggestion that we get the groups together and talk about a particular funding strategy that we now can take advantage of in Littleton for the first time because of something that the town meeting did last November and the voters did at the election this past May. And that is that Littleton has adopted the amended Community Preservation Act, which allows us to put additional local funds into the Community Preservation Fund to increase the base for state matching funds. What does that mean? That means that if we found $1 and put it into the Community Preservation Fund for an eligible project, which is housing, open space, historic, or recreation, if we put the dollar into the CPA fund, the act of putting it in the fund would mean that we would get 25 to 35 cents back from the state the following October. So that's a pretty good return on the investment to get 25 or 30% back. In round numbers, if we're talking about a $200,000 project, then by putting funds into the CPA fund and then taking it out, we would save the town, we would generate additional state matching funds of between $50,000 and $70,000. So if town meeting is looking to fund a $200,000 project, we felt obliged to put on the table a strategy which would save us between $50,000 and $70,000. The strategy itself does not take a position on spending the $200,000. And there's going to be plenty of discussion among the boards and among the public about the question that comes to town meeting of approving the use of $200,000 for the turf fields design. What we're putting on the table for discussion among the boards is if town meeting wants to fund that amount, if it's $200,000, then let's also bring forward a strategy that allows town meeting to save $50,000 to $70,000. So that's why we're all together. The funding source that we've identified is that there's a total of $350,000 that's been put, that the town currently has received from the developer of 15 Great Road, the Omni property, as part of the host community agreement. $100,000 of that was the direct result of the planning board's decision on the adjacent Orchard subdivision, where the planning board said, we want $100,000 to be available for active recreation purposes. So of that $350,000, $100,000 is earmarked for appropriation by town meeting for active recreation purposes. The other $250,000 is not restricted and could be used, frankly, for any purpose that the voters approve of. The strategy here is that if there's an expense of $200,000 for an active recreation project, then we could take the $100,000 that the planning board was responsible for, take another $100,000 out of the $250,000 that was in the rest of the host community agreement, and use those $200,000 not to raise taxes, but to transfer them from the mitigation funds that are just sitting there for appropriation. Put them into the Community Preservation Fund in one article, and the fact that we put them in is all it takes to qualify that money for state matching funds, because the state looks at the end of the fiscal year, they look to see how much of our own money did we put in. And if we put in 200 and it's just there for a few minutes in Article 7, and then town meeting votes to take it out in Article 8 from the Community Preservation Fund, that's enough to qualify it for $50,000 to $70,000. So I got to tell you that for that kind of payoff for a couple of minutes' work is something that we wanted to make sure that the voters were aware of and that we had a common understanding about the project. But what it all supports is, or what it's all premised on, is that we want to have the voters make the decision on this petitioned proposal. And so at this point, I'd invite the petitioners to give our group. I know you've given it to us before and presented to a number of the groups, but this is a larger audience than we've had in the past, and we appreciate just getting your presentation on what you're looking for, and thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you for inviting us. No, good.
Good.
If you'd like.
I'll hold the board.
Do you want to see the board? I know you've seen it.
Who's here?
There it is.
Nice.
Wow.
Alumni field hasn't moved?
Still there. So I'll actually say, so real quickly, just an overview site. This is alumni field here, the existing football field, as most of you know. This here is actually, I guess we call it the soccer / lacrosse field in the rear of the high school, furthest to the right, behind the parking lot.
My name's Michael Crory, member of the turf committee, along with
Can you just put that down for a while?
Kevin Hunt and Tim Beck. Mike Lynn's been available to help us on that as well. This group is made up of just a couple guys from Littleton that were asked over and over again by parents of this town to do something about the fields that their kids play on. Littleton high school sports would be football, soccer, field hockey, lacrosse. The youth sports would be football, flag football, soccer, and lacrosse. That's approximately 1,000 kids from 12th grade to U6 soccer. Like Kevin said, we're looking to put turf fields on Alumni Field, which is currently down at the middle school, and that high school field, which is directly behind the parking lot. We feel with the construction of these fields, this would alleviate pressure on existing fields, which used and not allowed to regenerate during the overuse. These grass fields are in constant state of deterioration due to the overuse. So many times, parents have said, we have to do something about these fields. Someone's going to get hurt, especially lacrosse, picking up balls, rocks come with it. And, you know, it's always, every year, same stuff. The football team has the same thing. We line up every night on that football field, and we're throwing rocks and everything else out of the way. These grass fields are not really grass fields. They don't have the time to rejuvenate. We also feel that this would take pressure off the town from finding new open space to create fields at this time. Right now, approximately $30,000 is spent by Park and Rec for fertilizer, paint, irrigation, seed, and loam annually. That's about $30,000 over a 10 to 12 year period. We feel it'll save about 1 million to 3 million gallons of water per year from the irrigation that's used on these fields. 8,000 pounds of pesticide, 20,000 recycled tires go into each field. We can increase our field play by about 32 weeks. Excuse me. On a grass field, you get about 32 weeks, 25 hours per week. That's about 8,000 hours. And with the turf, you get about 44 weeks, approximately 68 hours per week. That's 29,000 hours we get on turf fields per year. Currently, Acton right now was in a 5-year deal with a private club, soccer club, and they collect about $142,000 per year from that club to pay for their fields, and they approximately get $54,000 per year from the Park and Rec and schools to pay for that. And that's how we'd be looking to kind of alleviate some of the costs of that per year. And that's about it right now for my presentation.
Board?
Open it up for questions.
Questions?
Have you, well, first off, the $200,000, I know we've got some bids in, it was what, $89,000 or $88,000?
Just
By-
over 89.
By Gale Associates, who is an engineering firm that does the stuff, that's what they do. So, but the 200,000 going into CPC, I think is a great idea. I mean, we have the money there, let's put it in, get the matching funds, and use it as needed for, any particular recreation project, so.
I have a question. My question is meant to the school department. We're talking about your property. I'd like to know how the school committee feels about this topic. Are you in favor of having turf fields on your property? I mean, we can't go anywhere unless we have that approval.
Yeah, so we've only had preliminary discussions about this because I don't think we've had enough information. I think that actually going through a design phase would help us, answer that question more fully. What I will say is that, for our purposes, we don't maintain the fields. It's not part of our budget, and it's not our manpower that does that. That's on the town side. In terms of the impact on our operating budget or the way we go about conducting our business, it doesn't have any. That's, much more of a consideration for the town and the DPW who does do that work. Our athletic director is clearly in favor of this. He stated his reasons for it, and I think Mike cited them. Some of it is just being able to get on the fields, knowing when you're going to be able to get on the fields at the beginning of the spring season, which is a variable concept right now, depends on the weather, the winter, things like that. Knowing that you can, it's much easier to get on a turf field than it is to get on a natural grass field, will have a positive impact on our spring sports programs primarily. Being able to have, more access to the fields and more hours is beneficial as well. But the most important aspect of it from our point of view is, and again, it's not our issue in terms of maintaining the field, but when the fields can't be maintained in a particular manner, that causes problems for our athletes and our teams. So in general, I think as a group, we would support and accept the use of turf fields because we think it'll have a positive impact on, our athletes and our students. Having said that, what we haven't been able to get our hands around yet because we don't have the information is, as a board, do we accept the cost and the way it would be financed? We had long debates about that when the track proposal was put forward. Ultimately, I think we were all pretty clear that initially, yeah, we'd love to have a new track. Why wouldn't we? But the devil was in the details, and once we had more information and understood how it was going to be financed and went through the whole process, citing and things like that, it became more evident that, yes, we were in support of that. We haven't been able to have that discussion yet. We're more than happy to have it as we get more information, but there is a process that has to be gone through.
For the Park and Rec, any comments you want to make? If these fields were built, would that help your planning and for your programs that run?
So my name is Kate Hodges, I'm the Parks and Recreation Director. It's a difficult thing to ask. I think that there will be youth sports that will be able to use it. Currently, our biggest issue is finding a home for youth lacrosse, which is extremely popular in town and a growing group. Lacrosse is very hard on fields, so we haven't been able to find a field that's been able to sustain the amount of use that they have. When Mike was talking about picking up rocks, and that legitimately does happen, he's not embellishing. As far as savings on water and some other things, definitely will save on pesticide. I think that the budget, it's a wash of sorts. It will cost about $6,500-ish a year to maintain both of those fields if they were used for dual sports and to the level that Michael was just talking about, the number of hours. The New England Sports Turf Managers Association issues a degree or certification. It's a 60-hour course that you take once every 3 years, which I'm certified in that, but I would suggest that someone else from the town, maybe from either Parks or Highway, attend, because it helps in identifying when you have to clean and when you have to, if you think of it as a growing organism, even though it's synthetic, there's still, bodily fluids and other things that get on it, needs to be cleaned. And so, there's that. So I think that as far as the general maintenance per year, if we're in line with what we're currently doing, of course, if you are then saying that we want to supplement, additional monies from renting it out, well, more use requires more maintenance, so I think it would be a good thing, and the commission spoke about, the Recreation Commission met on Thursday, and Michael made a presentation to them, and they had asked that I do up, basically a use report, and if you use it for X amount of hours, what does that look like in terms of routine maintenance, and how much money would you have to generate in a current year to put away to be able to replace the turf? And talking about that use with, fairly minimal rental, outside rental, you're talking about like a maybe 10-year life before you have to replace the carpet. So, I definitely think it's good for the athletes in sorts, but I think that, there needs to be some discussion about maintenance. And I'm willing to help with that.
Mr. Clyde, since it's your department that does the maintenance, do you have any comments you want to make?
We don't really know enough about it yet. The maintenance is definitely going to be an issue for us. We're not really losing that much grass. We've heard a couple different versions. You can stitch the lines in, or you can still stripe the lines on the field, so we're not sure which way they're going. We just don't know enough about it yet to know what the impact is on us.
Okay, one more.
You would probably want to, when you're going through the design, it would be a good thing to, and Gail or whomever will go over this with you, but, just because it saves you money on the design doesn't mean, stitching the lines in, for instance, is much more expensive at the get-go, but it ends up saving. So those kind of things last almost 3 to 4 years, the lines. But, the issue is if you decide one time that you want to just have a soccer game on it and it's not lined for soccer, then of course there's that cost, because if you're stitching in every single sport that could possibly play on it, first of all, that gets confusing for the athletes, and second of all, it gets very costly because they have to be different colors every time.
One of the things that I don't think I've seen, and I think everybody agrees on it, and I don't know who's responsible for it, but the field management plan that we have now should probably be pointing to where we are about the fields being inadequate in their current state and where they're going to be over the next few years, and whether that inadequacy is going to grow the way it is. But I don't, maybe we do, I'm just not aware of one, but we don't have a report, whether it's PMBC or Park and Rec or the schools or whoever is responsible for it, on the condition of the fields and the projected use and whatever shortfall those fields come to in order to, get us to this point where we say, gee, artificial turf's the way to go. So I think we need to take that step, or at least in my opinion, we need to take that step to say, well, here are the fields, this is the condition they're in, this is the projected use, or this is the current use promoting this condition, and this is the projected use, and that should lead us to the conclusion of whether we, how aggressively we manage this.
Well, I think 145 signatures for this to go on town floor will tell you how aggressive the folks in town feel about the usage of these fields. I've seen the fields, I've been on the fields for many years. They get a lot of use. The bottom line is, we got a lot of kids that play sports in this town, and the fields get a lot of use. So, you can study everything all you want, go out and take a walk around the fields, and you'll be convinced that something needs to be done. Go out on a Saturday, talk to the people that are playing out there. Go out on a Friday, talk to the folks that are playing out there. They'll be more than happy to talk to you and tell you how bad the fields are. They're not good.
Well, I think one of the things that happened with the track is there was quite a bit of information that's gathered about the track being unsafe, so on and so forth, and a very similar process. And I don't think you should imply that I'm not paying attention to the voters, but I think as public officials, we have due diligence that needs to be done to gather the facts so that the public can make an intelligent choice. And that's going to be what town meeting has to decide, and if it was just up to the petitioners by themselves, it'd already be decided, and we wouldn't need this discussion. But we need to look at the condition of the field so that if somebody on town meeting asks, we have the answer to the question.
Joe?
Hey, Paul.
Certainly intuitively and anecdotally, we need more fields. Lacrosse has grown since we did the track study. Track was very much a binary. We didn't have one, we wanted one. So it wasn't a case of, do we need 2 or 3 tracks, can we use the track more? I agree somewhat with what you said, Alex, but I think you've already done a piece of this homework. Perhaps a more detailed homework assignment, if we may, since it involves the school committee and the like, and the children in town, to really put that in front of the voters. And that is fair for them, so that they can see that. And you're going to project out the cost a little bit more. So, a small little spreadsheet that shows it all, one piece of paper, real simple for, the simpletons here on the board to understand, and help us out there, please. That'll be very good. There's many other issues that go beyond just the money. There's concern about injuries, and all the research I've been able to do up to date is that the injuries are pretty much, it's 50-50. We tend to think back to the Astrodome in Houston, when it was pretty much, when you fell, that's what it felt like hitting the ground, and maybe even harder, like concrete. The technology's expanded tremendously since those days. So the injuries, and again, the research I've been able to do up to this point shows that they're different injuries, but for the most part, it's the same amounts, if you will. The rate of incidence is the same. Pollutants are concerned. The EPA uses the term crumb rubber. And crumb rubber comes from recycled tires and what may be in the rubber in the tires it started with and as they've been on the road, et cetera. The EPA in 2009 is the last time they did anything substantive on this. And at that point, they said, need more research. They didn't have an answer, is what it boils down to. So it could be worse, it could be okay. But the EPA has addressed that, so that's out there. I think tellingly is the MIAA, Massachusetts Interscholastic Athletic Association, wants to use turf fields, tournament games especially. As I've been told from the school department, is pristine fields, pristine grass where it's just perfect and it looks like you're watching it on high-definition television would be the preferred method. Just let's keep anything pristine when it comes to grass in and around this part of the country. So turf fields become the preferred method when it gets to that level. And then, as we say, intuitively and anecdotally, I think we're all shaking our heads yes. Help us so that we can go, yes, the science, the data supports precisely what our intuition and those anecdotes support, is what I'd ask you all to do.
No, I think that's really well said. I mean, I'm obviously safety first, but interesting stats about the safety thing there. But I agree with what Jim said as well, so I'm good.
Okay, I'll open it up to the floor. If I call you once again, recognize who you are and what your address is.
Brian Tarlock's Fletcher Lane. When this issue came up, because my kids play soccer, I'm an assistant soccer coach, I did a little research into the cost, and it's interesting. I found there's a bunch of studies out there that say that turf is actually less expensive than grass fields, but there's also a bunch of studies that say turf is more expensive. So I looked a little bit more. The studies that say that turf is more expensive is done by research universities. The studies that say that turf is cheaper is done by the turf companies. So I would just be, I'm just a little cautious about the assertion that this will actually save us money. But I want to know where the data is coming from. Because of course the turf companies are going to tell us that it's cheaper. So I guess that's one thing. I also want to know a little bit more about, I think it's great that we're using this, CPA funding source perhaps for the design, but I wonder about, the couple $1 million capital cost. Earlier this evening we were talking about capital cost and whether or not we, we're going to be adequately funding or not, and whether it went through our projected vetting list or not. And while I applaud the notion of citizens petition, this does come out of band from our normal mechanism for deciding what a capital project is. And my last point is simply to say that the fields need help I guess I wouldn't disagree with that, but there's a lot of things in town that fall into that same category. You could you try to drive on, a whole bunch of our roads, those also need help. There's a lot, we always have different competing needs for the funds, and I'm just a little nervous. I mean, when I've talked to people, and I appreciate everyone being here, but everyone I've talked to in town, when I've said, do you think that artificial turf is the #1 priority in town that we should spend a couple $1 million on? I just get incredulous looks from people that we're even considering that amount of money.
Hi, Kristen Sloboda from the State Road. I don't know if you've noticed, but we are working on a bunch of different roads near the state, like we're talking about here tonight. And also, to me, my children's safety is a huge risk. And I'm willing to spend a little bit of money to protect the children of the town. And I actually went to Littleton High School, graduated from here, played on these fields, and we're playing on a lot of the same fields, and they are in pretty bad shape. And then I also went on to college and played on a turf field, and I was at a huge disadvantage. And the children here should not be at that disadvantage.
Fred Faulkner, 141 Harwood Ave. I'm also a member of the Finance Committee, but this is just speaking as a citizen. I had the opportunity to attend a football game in Chelmsford this past weekend, and on your way into the field, which happens to be a turf field, beautiful facility, on your way into the facility, there happens to be a equally beautiful bronze plaque giving accolades to all of the local businesses, the police department fund, the fire department fund, for donating funds for this project. And I just roughly added them up. It was in the neighborhood of $300,000 when I stopped counting the small donators at the bottom of the plaque. I was just wondering if anybody has considered this as a part of a way to lessen the impact on the taxpayers.
Thank you, Fred.
Does he want an answer?
Sure.
Yeah, so since we last met, you guys asked me, the Selectmen asked me to come up with some ways to fund this. We've set up a 501(c) through the Littleton Boosters Association with the earmark in there for turf. Anything donated through turf will be placed towards turf. I've looked at number amounts of grants that we'll try and write for to get grant funds. I'll also ask tonight permission from the Selectmen to fundraise to the local businesses within the town. And I believe I need permission from you to do that. So we'll be doing that tonight as well. So right now, that's what we're doing as far as fundraising goes and grants. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex, you had your hand up?
Yes, thank you. I would love to have AstroTurf. Alex Pratt, School Committee. I would love to have turf fields, but as Mike said, the devil's in the details, and I think that's a process we need to go through. My questions that I would sort of like to add to that process are, one, when Kate Hodges was speaking about the maintenance of turf fields, what is the cost of that versus the cost of a current field? Presumably it's cheaper, is what I've been hearing. How much? And then when you factor that in versus the lifetime of the turf field, what is the overall long-term cost, not just for 10 years, but 20 years out, 30 years out, and so forth. The other question that's related to that is what is the cost to bring the current fields that I think there's widespread agreement that they're not in good shape. What is the cost, or is it even possible to bring those up to, not up to code, but to make them more suitable for playing, for use of sports now? Because that could be, if it's just a couple, maybe $10,000, $20,000 to put them in much better shape long-term, I think that would be a wise way to go. I don't think that's probably the number that it would be, or if it's even feasible. But those are avenues that I think we should explore, because I think we all want to have fields that are good to play on, and I think the question is just how do we get there, and how do we fund it?
Okay. Nick, did you know?
Yeah, Mitt Wanzer, Community Preservation Committee, and thanks for hosting this joint meeting. We're in order with eight members present tonight, and according, the agenda items that we'd like to address at some point is that we need to vote on the eligibility of the project. And then on the merits of the project, we'd like to vote on the application for funding. And I'd be interested to know the amount. 89,000 was one of the numbers that is asked for on their application for funding from the turf group. So there's two items of business to address for our committee's sake, but I'm also interested in, since we're together with the Board of Selectmen, to hear your thoughts on, is this emblematic, is this a good example of a project that uses this kind of leveraged funding scenario through CP fund to do projects that are in categories that are eligible for CP funding? Because one of our goals this year is to work with boards to efficiently and fairly plan how we spend our money. And we also welcome the fact that this money bolsters our fund by almost 40% this year. If 200,000 comes into the CP fund, that is going to bolster our fund and make it a lot easier for us to decide on projects that are not active recreation, to feel like we can generously support them.
Eligibility, what was the second thing?
Our committee has a two-step process: eligibility request and application for funding.
McIver?
Sure. Don McIver, also in the CPC, and I have a disagreement. That is not what we passed at the last meeting. And also on the planning board, which does deserve credit for putting $100,000 aside for active recreation. And I was a little surprised we were the applicant last week, and I guess all of a sudden you're the applicant this week. And the intention was from feasibility to design, and cost from $35,000 to $200,000. A little surprised with the changes. But for the planning board, they did put aside $100,000, thinking it may help relieve some of the need for fields. And the applicants, they should be congratulated for putting together a petition, have enthusiasm, but there are some concerns here. And at last Tuesday's meeting, the planning board did give the blessing that the selectmen would put $100,000 into the CPC fund in the hopes that maybe it'd go for a feasibility study. I think the good news is that tonight, regardless of anything else, you can put $100,000 of the active recreation money into CPC and grow it by $35,000, regardless of whether we do nothing else tonight, and you should. You also have the capability of taking that $250,000, which is unrestricted, and you could put as much of that as you want to into the CPC fund, and whether it's unrestricted or whatever. And if you did a total of 200,000, which is the amount mentioned tonight, you could get 122,000. But you're tying it to some sort of action that really hasn't been studied well. And that doesn't put a negative spin on the proposal from this petition. It just says we need to understand more. At the last CPC meeting, there was an overwhelming feeling of the people there is that regardless of who comes forward with whatever project, we would not vote on it at the next meeting. This is the next meeting. We would discuss it with them. And that was the feeling. I can read you notes from folks, from one of the other members saying that our last meeting, as I most recall, members felt that the residents of Littleton would be better served if, as a committee, we would approve CPC projects on a worthiness basis, not first come, first serve, which is what's happened. This is a first come basis rather than on a first come, first serve basis. This means the final okay by our CPC committee
would only be given when the CPC project applications for the fiscal year, that's for the whole year, are known and evaluated. Then the CPC project would go to the Finance Committee, and that's something we haven't done last year, and we got into trouble, and the Finance Committee can speak to that. I would feel that we need to have a lot more discussion on our approach regarding each CPC project, and more importantly, the procedure that we need to follow. These are my thoughts, and a lot of other people, and these aren't my words, this is another representative. And we asked the chair of the CPC to convey to whoever the applicant was, because last week we didn't even know last meeting we didn't know who the applicant was, that this is our feeling, we would not vote at our next meeting. And I have an email back from the chair saying that that was conveyed to the town administrator, and the applicant du jour, the committee I'm on, Maren Toohill, and that was conveyed. And I would have hoped that if there's a new application came in the meantime, that would still be conveyed to that chair, and I don't know if it has. So the feeling of that meeting was too premature to vote on any application coming before us. But still, step back, there is no reason why the town loses any money. You can certainly funnel money into the CPC committee and grow it. And then perhaps decide such an expensive project at an annual town meeting where capital projects should be looked at after they get thorough review. We lose nothing. There's no urgency here. You know, I have no problem with the idea of trying to improve the fields and get funding to improve the fields, but let's do it so we understand what we're doing. And certainly, the idea behind this in the beginning was to do a feasibility study for $35,000, not design something at $200,000. But I think we have to be financially responsible in what we do. So, yeah, I don't see an urgency. In fact, even on our guidelines, if we're going to do something, a special town meeting, the guidelines was submit eligibility requirements mid-June. And then, if it passes through, then put the funding requirements mid-August. Here we are late September, first time sitting down in a rather complex situation, asked to approve the eligibility on the spot, then approve the funding on the spot, and I think this is financially irresponsible. This isn't giving a basis or evaluation of the proposal. Let the proposal come in a timely fashion, that come at annual town meeting. And, yeah, this is the feeling of the majority of people at the CPC meeting. And, you know, you go to last week when the planning board was the applicant, the feeling was, you know, it's your money for the $100,000 for active recreation. Certainly, there's no problem putting that into the CPC fund and growing that. But the thought was for a cheaper feasibility study. It's too early to push this through for this special town meeting. Thank you.
Mark? Yes, Mark Monari, Chairman of the Planning Board. Just a little history on the $100,000. We got it from Omni because we did an open space project, and the open space that we got was not suitable for active recreation. So we got, in lieu of that, $100,000. Now, the planning board for years has been trying to find more ball fields, find more open space for ball fields, fix the ball fields that we have. This is a perfect use of the $100,000. It just makes sense to put the money in the CPC to get more money. This money is going to go for ball fields, for turf fields, for fixing the fields, for whatever the people that need the money are going to use it for. It just makes, I mean, I graduated Littleton High School, and I realized that if someone's going to give you $25,000 for $100,000 in the bank, it makes sense. Timing is not the issue. We need to move forward on these. If the people that are getting the signatures and the people that are using the ball fields want to fast track this, try to get it started so that we might have a chance to get some of them done next summer when they're really going to be needed. As the planning board, we voted to put this $100,000 in there, and that is how we approach it. We don't want to wait. We'd rather use the money with the CPC, but we're prepared to give the money without the CPC. So I think it makes sense to use the CPC to get the funds, but the money was always earmarked for active recreation, for the ball fields, and we should be doing it sooner rather than later.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Sir, Paul Tokmakian, 32 Lawrence Street. If the money is, maybe this is a question for you, Keith, if the money is allocated to the CPC, but at the town meeting in November, it's not voted to go to the turf, what happens to the $100,000, or the money that the state has matched for that, for those funds?
We get it anyway.
If town meeting votes to put, and let's use the number of 200,000, I will say we need to have a discussion at some point about what the actual number is, and maybe PMBC or others can help us fill in that blank. But let's assume it's 200,000 that goes in from the 15 Great Road funds to the Community Preservation Fund. If you vote to put the money in an article, then it counts, and it produces the matching funds, which we project at being between $50,000 and $70,000. Even if you don't then vote to take it out for the turf field design. And as has been said, and I appreciate the position that the folks that, the majority of Community Preservation Committee members at a previous meeting, based on the information they had, took a certain position. And I don't disagree with your doing that, but the reason that we're all here tonight is because there's additional information we want you to have, and we want to have a common understanding of what the approach is, which Mr. Montanardi certainly said, and it is that town meeting would be able to just vote to take the $200,000 out of the mitigation funds, period, and not put it into community preservation and take it out. Just take it from the 15 Great Road money. And if they do that, then we don't get $50,000 to $70,000 in matching funds. Therefore, it's worth it for us to take the additional step of putting another article in so that we can get the matching funds. If town meeting is going to spend the money on the turf design, then we can position it so that we get state matching funds along the way.
Could I get clarification? Because I don't quite understand that. Being on both committees that have been intimately involved with this is still confusing. If we put, say, $200,000 into CPC, divert that into other stream, doesn't it get raise the basis and match right then and there? I mean, it doesn't need another article. You already get the money. You get the money
from you get the money from the article that puts the money in. That's correct.
Right, without any spending. So we have
Without
putting
any
money in
spending.
and we have spending out.
Right,
And I'm
without
saying
any
divide
spending.
them.
But what we're here tonight to talk about is to see whether there are two articles that are going in at the same time, because we know the spending article is going in because it's a petitioned article. The Community Preservation Committee and others are here tonight so that we can, because their approval would be needed for this two-step process. Only Community Preservation Committee they're the gatekeeper for the CPA money. So if we put in any amount into their fund, they have to vote to recommend that it come out. I think the discussion is, we'd like to have a general understanding of whether we're of a common understanding that if the money goes in, it will come out, or not.
How can we get to that right now?
Well, let's try to refine this a bit.
Mr. Fian, you were next.
Jeff Fian, Chairman of the PMBC, Vice Chair of the CPC, resident of Mannion Place. So I've got a bit of knowledge about what's going on with this. But to address Don McIver's discussion on putting the money into the CPC, I would suggest that not be done until a vote be taken by the CPC to at least support the eligibility request. Because if the CPC doesn't support it, then this goes to town meeting. We're still going to need the funds to pay for it, so that I think we need to vote as a CPC group first and see where it goes before the money gets put in. On the PMBC side, I would suggest that tonight we vote on the eligibility request and not the application. The reason being that to put a warrant article on, we need only to have the eligibility request in place. That would allow for this to be put on in the fashion that's been presented. As far as what the application is looking for is a dollar figure, and the PMBC isn't in a position to give that figure. Granted, we have two proposals in, but we haven't had a chance to review them and compare them apples to apples to go through them and see how much they fulfilled the what was in the RFQ. The dollar amount could be inserted, would need to be inserted prior to town meeting, and the building committee would have the recommendation for that number prior to town meeting, and for the CPC to be able to vote on the application as well. So I guess I covered both there and there.
Mr. Chairman, that raises a point of order for our two items on the agenda. Is it correct, what Jeff Ian just said, that we don't have to vote on the dollar figure tonight for the turf group in order for them, because they're interested in fast, admittedly, they are proposing this as on a very fast track, so that they can get to the construction phase all the earlier. Given that we can only approve money at town meeting, we have one opportunity in the fall and one in the spring. I guess one way of putting the question is, what would happen do we have to take action tonight in order for something to happen during the winter?
Well, I think the short answer is that if, as your vice chair outlined, if the Community Preservation Committee could take a vote on the eligibility request, which is what the applicant filed on Friday, then you could at least send the signal that you believe that it is that the project is something that would be eligible for community preservation funds. And also, as Jeff says, since we don't know tonight the precise dollar figure that would be best to recommend the town meeting fund, we can know that, in round numbers, 200,000 is what we've been talking about. I don't think that there's a different number that we should use for putting in the warrant. It's not. Based on what we know, it's not going to be more than that. So if the petitioners put in an article requesting 200,000, we've drafted an article for a total of 200,000 in 15 Great Road funds. If those two articles were to be inserted onto the warrant tonight, then between now and town meeting, the PMBC could fine-tune what the number is, which is the successful proposal, what's the right number. If we were to go forward with design, that number could then come to the full Community Preservation Committee for a vote prior to town meeting. I think what we're looking, though, to have is the signal, and for those that see that the putting money in to the CPA fund is linked to the notion of taking it out for a particular purpose. And to the extent that they're linked, and there's a common understanding that they're linked, it would be helpful for the Community Preservation Committee to give some signal tonight of their willingness to entertain funding this through CPA monies. And I think the most you can do tonight, absent a final number for funding, the most you could do tonight is to act on the eligibility request. And I think we're all of the common understanding it is eligible.
The
as a
CPC
recreation
typically
project.
meets the last Tuesday of the month, so that would be the last Tuesday of October, right? So we could vote on the application then?
You could vote, yes, yes, if you take a vote on the application, on the funding, prior to town meeting, then we can bring to town meeting your recommendation to use CPA funds. We've done that, frankly, with some land purchase articles that the selectmen insert them. You don't insert them. The selectmen insert them. If we're proposing that the CPA is funding, we go to you to get your recommendation. You vote that prior to town meeting, even if not prior to the close of the warrant, so that when we go to town meeting, we're acting on your favorable recommendation to spend the money.
So, I'd entertain a motion to hear eligibility, the requests on this project, and I'll just give a little testimony from the application itself, which says, information from, on typical projects like this, having to do with active recreation, and especially turf fields, that turf field design falls under the category as an allowable use under recreation, rehabilitate, and restore. CPA funds can be used for study, design, and construction, but not for purchasing the turf itself. Is there a motion from the CPC?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, let's have a discussion. I think so far, the discussion of CPC has been outside the open meeting. And it's really been between the chair, Mitt, and Keith, and the vice chair is also the one who's asked for the proposals. I find this rather disturbing that a lot of this activity is happening outside of an open meeting, and that would seem quite apparent at the last meeting. That's why you got the comments about, let's not make a decision at the next meeting. And that is a print, and that is here. There were objections from what was sent out for minutes for that meeting.
I'd like to respond to both of
let
those
me
things.
finish. We lose nothing to transfer the money into the CPA funds. I think Keith was quite on target when he said, well, I think it's obvious to us it's
Can I
eligible.
respond to
That
those
isn't an
points,
issue.
please?
You're responding to Mitch,
Yes.
he's making,
Yes, but I'm also trying to make sure you understand some of the issues, since you haven't been there, and even Jeff Fian hasn't been at those meetings. It's really been one person that
Well,
had
if we could
the
take
chair
it
who's
one at a
been-
time, and he's made two assertions.
yeah, go ahead.
One is that the minutes that Mr. McIver referred to are draft minutes right now for our meeting of of August 26th. And there's just 3 sentences I'd like to read. Don McIver sees red flags popping up, he said, for what he perceived as the poor planning of the project agents as suggested by their hasty timeline. Other committee members, John Ledger and Don McIver, said it would be okay to tell the turf group by email that it is likely we will only vote on the eligibility request.
And I think, I
And then
disagree.
For the second point, Mr. Chairman, that we've been conducting business outside of open meeting. As I recall, the only email thread that was brought to the attention by Town Hall to the group was an email drafted by Don McIver that raised many points, and he circulated broadly to the committee. I haven't been doing things outside of open meeting.
So your committee has made a motion, it's been seconded, so you want to follow through?
I didn't hear a second, actually.
Second.
It was moved by Jeff Fian.
And this was a discussion, as you point out, it's actually our chair that's running the meeting.
Well, and you're running this part. You asked a motion that was made. Is there someone from your committee that made a second?
Second.
There's a second back there. You want to take it from there?
And then we.
Now your chairman is speaking. If you want to speak.
And I'm addressing him, I can't see him, but I'm addressing him. This is a discussion period, this is quite appropriate.
If he wants to recognize you now, I'm in the middle of this. This is your committee that's conducting this. If he wants to recognize you, then fine.
I think this is a
At
problem.
this point, Mr. Chairman, typically in a CPC meeting, we have a two-step process, as I indicated earlier, and the first step is to determine eligibility. It's fruitless for an applicant to come before us and say, we'd like to use your funds to build a stadium. It's not allowable by state law. So in our process, we hear eligibility, and what I read earlier from the application is the kind of testimony that we seek. Also, the diligence of an agent for the committee, in the case it was I, who approached the Community Preservation Coalition that we're dues-paying members of. It's a nonprofit that gives advice free to members. And I asked him directly about this because turf was something to me that was a red flag as a potentially not allowable project. And that's when we got the statement that I read to you, that it's allowable for design in all those phases, but not for buying the actual stuff itself. So I just want to highlight that usually this is the most awkward part of our typical meetings, is because we have a two-step process, and as alluded to through what Keith recommended, we could address the application for funding in detail and have copies distributed ahead of time for our members to look at. I'd really like to just hear any comments pertaining to the eligibility of the project for CP funds.
Anyone from your committee that wants to speak on what you just said?
Yes, I would like to discuss that. You mentioned I sent out an email message, and yes, I did, because I was complaining about decisions completely opposite of what was in that meeting. And to read one paragraph, first of all, I was questioning why we're holding a special meeting. But looking at the proposed agenda, it lists that we're going to hold hearings and vote on the eligibility and final funding for a project for which we haven't even seen a proposal, for which at the very last CPC meeting, we declared that we would be receptive to discussing about the concept, and we would convey to whoever was going to present that proposal, at that point we had no idea, that we would listen to them, whoever they may represent. Even that wasn't known when we discussed the last CPC meeting, but would not take any action that same evening. Would not take any action that same evening. Eligibility is an action.
Are you reading from your own email?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any other testimony on the eligibility of this project?
I think it's immaterial to decide eligibility, because we can decide that anytime. No one is evaluating the project one way or another.
Before I get the public involved, I want your committee to solve, to come to a conclusion, and take a vote or whatever is needed.
I think, well, is anybody other, well, I'll say it the same way. And Don, you feel free to comment on this, because in our two-step process, we're looking solely at eligibility. And this is important to streamline the meeting process. We don't always want to hear a full application and full public comment on the merits of the project, and certainly not on the way in which we do business. And I have to make a side comment about that, since we're before the board, and one of our goals is to work with other boards in town more directly this year and moving forward. It's important to us that well, I'm off topic here, and I want to just reassure you that the types of things, the ways in which it's suggested that we have been doing business are not the norm for what we typically do, and we conduct our meetings directly relevant and hear applicants in a fair way, I think, according to the plan documents that we drafted almost 10 years ago. So if there's going to be a change in the way we do business, we'll address that in our next meeting.
How many of your members are here?
8.
8, okay. Could you raise your hands just so we can see where you are, the members of the Community Preservation Committee? Okay, so when the chair of the CBC calls for a vote, it will be a vote of those members. I'd suggest that they raise their hands or roll call or something, just so we,
Can I make
just so we know.
Sure.
Until the Community Preservation Act changed last year, the Community Preservation Committee, we couldn't give away money. I've been on the committee since its inception, it has been met, and we would do whatever we could to get people to come in. We would hold meetings right up to the last moment. We'd take applications, we'd take eligibility requests right up until the last moment to try to get knowledge out on it, to give back money to the townspeople. This is all started for the Community Preservation Act as it was written and for the benefit of the town. We want to give these funds to the town. The money is already taken out of our tax dollars automatically. This is an opportunity to put the money back in without costing us anything additional. And what's happened in the last few years is the face of the committee has changed. These people are entitled to have their opinions, to bring new policies to the committee. There's nothing set in stone with anything that Mr. MacGyver has said. It's been talk, it's been idle talk, there's been no votes taken. We're entitled to sit here right now and take this vote. Mr. MacGyver complained that we were trying to have a meeting last Tuesday, which wasn't our regular scheduled meeting of the fourth Tuesday of the month. And I go back to when we used to say, we're going to hold a meeting whenever we can, because this is the townspeople's money. There's been talk about having the CPC only looking at eligibility requests once a year. That's a whole new policy. We're supposed to be working for the community. We're supposed to be a user-friendly committee. We're not supposed to be making it more difficult for the citizens of the town. And as far as this being an eligible request, there's nothing that I have seen in it. There's nothing that Mitt or anyone has given us information on that would suggest that this is not an eligible application or eligibility request here. So with that,
Thank you. Is
I'm
there-
ready for a vote.
I think it deserves a response. Wait a minute. I mean, with all due respect, Jeff Ian has not even been at the last couple of meetings. This has come up. No one's talking about keeping out eligibility. We're talking about funding and making sure the projects have merit. Because last year, we ran out of funding. We do not do a good review of capital funds. This is a capital fund that has a lot of problems. As far as...
I think we can address those at our next meeting, actually.
No,
Because
no,
right now,
excuse me, I
we
mean-
have a motion on the floor.
That's
and it's
right,
been
and I want to
seconded,
try to discuss this as
And the
well.
motion is about eligibility requests. So what you're talking about is the way our committee does business. And
No,
it's not
I'm
in
addressing
order.
what Mr. Fian has talked about.
I'll ask you to stick to our agenda.
I will stick
The
to
agenda says right now,
Excuse
we are
me.
having a
I would
hearing
like-
on eligibility requests.
me.
It
So-
isn't, excuse me, I think when Mr. Fian says, well, he's been on the committee for a long time, I was with a group that got the 500 signatures to get the CPA into the
That
town.
has
And then
nothing
to
to do
extend it.
with the-
Well, it also has something to do with what Mr. Fian
Don, it
said.
has nothing to do with the turf. And this is just going to go south if you don't stay on topic.
No,
Can you vote?
we lose nothing.
We have a motion
I'm
that's been
addressing
seconded.
eligibility. We lose nothing by not taking a vote on this. We lose nothing. We can put the money in,
I'd like
those
to hear-
warrant articles without any problem.
All those in favor of the motion to approve the eligibility request for the Littleton Turf Fields design and construction signify their affirmative vote by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
All opposed? One abstention? Thank you.
What was the vote?
It's 7-0-1.
Thank you. Okay, that's the meeting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. Before we move on, any more questions? Seeing none, board, are we ready for a motion?
Yep.
Ready? Yeah. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to insert onto the warrant of the November 12, 2014 special town meeting, subject to approval from as by town council, an article to transfer $200,000 from 15 Great Road mitigation funds to Community Preservation Fund Recreation Reserve, which is expected to produce between $50,000 and $70,000 in additional state matching CPA funds.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, motion carries. There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So you insert it with 200,000.
Every time.
Put 200,000 in the article. That matches our article, and we will finalize what the number is that we move on the floor. In your petition, put in 200. That way it matches ours. Thank you. Well, we don't know yet. We'll plug in the numbers. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You like guitar?
Yes, yes, definitely.
Means your 100,000 and another.
Thanks, Paul.
But it's in, but you don't need an article to move it, it's actually available for.
Okay, so we voted to give you the 100 grand, you're gonna
So
get it
you're
no
all
matter
set.
what.
Right, we're all set.
Sharing your opinion. Yeah. I'm in my second glass already. I was gonna die of thirst. That yelled out. I couldn't. Yes or no? Yeah, exactly.
I forgot to get.
The money won't be
Where did,
I was gonna say something after all that. Yeah. Good job.
All right, let's get going.
with Jimmy?
He's just talking.
All right, we have to continue our meeting. Item 8A, special town meeting, inserting articles for the special town meeting.
Mr. Chairman, there are four matters which we're asking the board to vote on tonight to complete insertion of articles on the warrant. One of them, or I should say, three of them pertain to proposed bylaw amendments, all of which we've discussed previously, and we've had town council draft language which we can take a look at and discuss. The additional one, the new item is a request to add a project to the article you've already inserted with supplemental capital projects for this year, and we're asking that you add a third capital project, this one for fuel facility replacement in the amount of $200,000, and I would defer to Bonnie and Jim for an update. And we've sent you an update, but just to go through it with you.
Sure. Basically, this project was in our capital plan several years ago, and I think it was slated actually for fiscal 2015. But through a discussion we had with the Light Department, in particular with Savastanos, the general manager at that time, he indicated that the Light Department wanted to support the project and asked us to take it out of our capital plan. The Light Department, the commissioners voted to support the replacement of the fuel facility in the amount of $300,000. And at that time, it was hoped that that would be enough to actually complete the full project. They have done all of the engineering work. We put the project out to bid twice over the last few months in hopes to get some better pricing. But it looks like the low bid, the apparent low bid that we received at the latest bid opening was about $436,000. So with the contingency and the engineering cost, we're going to be about $200,000 shy. The facility is located at 39 Air Road. It services the light and water departments, the highway department, the police department, the fire department, any department that has vehicle usage. We also had a discussion with the light department and Jimmy Clyde and public safety officials about the viability of, do we really want to keep the facility open? And the thought, particularly on the light department on public safety side, is that there is a benefit to having the facility here. The ice storm was a good example that came up when there was no power, possibly at the fuel stations in town. Having our own facility under generated power provides a safety measure for the departments. So the bottom line is we're about $200,000 short to fund the project. We are out of compliance with DEP regulations. They could, from my understanding, come in and shut the facility down. So we do need to get the project completed. There is one source of funding remaining for special town meeting, and that is the excess snow and ice funds. There's about $212,000 remaining from that. So the suggestion is to utilize that appropriation for this particular project.
Has DEP notified us we're in violation?
Not yet. We're in non-compliance with a few things because we've been filling out our forms every year saying we're gonna replace the tanks, and they haven't really come down on us yet. But our leak detection is out of code, and we have galvanized piping that doesn't have cathodic protection, and our pumps are not exactly totalizing correctly. So we have a few items. I talked to our inspector. They're looking at a minimum of $60,000 just for the leak detection that we could potentially take out a year. So we talked about, should we decommission the system now until we could come up with funding? You know, if it was the Springtown meeting, you know, and that's what we're trying to talk about, the funding source. If we bring it to their attention, they'll, basically, they just, our inspectors and stuff say, just keep quiet until they come in.
But you've been saying you're gonna be replacing, that's holding them
Right.
off from showing up.
And the only thing that stops us from replacing it right now is the certain knowledge that it's going to cost more than the $300,000 that Light and Water's put on the table. So the question to us is, do we want to make up the difference, be able to continue to say we're working towards it? Or do we, you know, abandon them, you know, or decommission them and come up with some other plan? The strategy here is that we have bids in hand. We put it out to bid twice. First round didn't work out successfully, put it out to bid again. And this would allow us to accept the low bid the Monday after town meeting. We could say with a straight face to DEP, we're still moving forward, bringing funding to town meeting on November 12th. We'll award the contract on November 17th. So that's one plan, and we only get to do that if we put the request for funding on the warrant now. So.
I believe the number is gonna be more than 200, because we're getting numbers from the engineers, because the $300,000 number from the light department includes the engineering, and the last email I got, I think the engineering was around 78,000 currently, with probably a little bit more to go. So just without contingency, that puts us at like 516, so that's 216, and if we add contingency and construction oversight, we're gonna be up there a little bit more.
So where's that coming from? If you got the 212 and you got 200 asked for, I mean, would it be prudent to say the 212 instead of the 200?
I think it would be prudent to say the 212, and then I think it would also be prudent to engage, you know, maybe the Light and Water Commissioners on another conversation about, you know,
Additional amount.
Right.
Yeah.
But based on what I think you just said, you can be looking at a total project of about 550. And throw contingency costs on. So 300 and another 250.
Should we be asking for 250 in this, or what number?
I have 212.
212.
212.
Sold.
Yeah, so I mean, that's something that we can bring forward to the Light and Water Commissioners if necessary.
This requirement for residency refers only to town boards established by statute or votes of town meeting, okay? So if we're talking about, say, my service, Bonnie's service, Scott Edwards' service, Jim Clyde's service, in our official capacity on some committee that the selectmen establish by your vote, then this does not apply. This restriction does not apply. It only applies to boards with authority granted by town meeting and statute. Because the fact is, you've established things like the Land Sale Committee, which consists of all staff, to advise you on tax title properties. That's okay. That doesn't conflict with this language, because it's the Board of Selectmen that establish that as that land sale committee, for example. This language is meant to get at, to address those committees with statutory or town meeting authority. For those, they would have to be residents of the town unless they fall into a category that some state law or regulation says that by virtue of their position, they need to be on the board. And I think that will get it. I think that will address the issues that have been raised. You still want town staff, for the ad hoc groups that you do to advise this board on your functions. You're still going to want to call on the staff members to do that. This language in this article will not prevent you from getting that advice from your staff.
Would there be a case where a town meeting authorizes a study and authorizes the money, and we choose the members of who will do that? Would that be, which way would that be?
That would be a vote established by you. I mean, because town meeting is not voting to, and that happens all the time. We'll get an appropriation, and the board decides that the best way to figure out how to spend the money is to appoint an advisory committee. And since that committee is established by you and not by town meeting, you can put whoever you want on it. Whoever you need to have on that committee.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to insert the following articles onto the warrant for the November 12, 2014 special town meeting, subject to approval, as to form by town council. First, add fuel facility replacement, $212,000 to supplemental FY 2015 capital items from available funds article. Town bylaw amendment, Community Preservation Committee, add to FinCom. Town bylaw amendment, boards appointed residency requirement. Town bylaw amendment, boards appointed removal.
Second.
Moved in second, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Highway procurement, once again, we have Jimmy here at 10 o'clock.
You wouldn't have missed the rest of that meeting for the world.
Yep.
Moves that the Board of Selectmen vote to award a one-year contract to the sole bidder, Waste Management, Inc. of Woburn, Mass. for hauling, trucking of solid waste, bulky items, construction, demolition waste, plastic, and tin cans from the Littleton Transfer Station for round-trip pricing as follows. To Corvanta and Haverhill, 183.00. To Devon's facility, 84.00. And to the Groton facility, 92.50.
Second.
Moved in second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? 8C, staff vacancy, tax collector, money.
This is a real tough position to fill. Tax collector,
Becky has announced that she's her intent to retire at the beginning of January. So I'm very sad to see her go. She's been with the town since 1986. It's a tremendous amount of service that she's provided.
When did she come here?
86.
86. 86, yes. And she was elected to the tax collector position in 99. Before that, she was the assistant in the office. So she's been in that office for a long time. And speaking selfishly as the accountant, there's always a lot of tension, it seems like, in other communities between the accountant and the collector, because so much of what I do relies on her doing her job very well, and she has forgotten more about tax collection than I'll ever learn about it. She does a fantastic job. She makes the accounting portion very easy. My auditor is he said she's the only collector that he will, if there's a mistake in the accounting record, he'll go over to the collector, but not with Becky, because she's that good. So, I mean, I can't say enough about her service and the skill set that she provides. And I appreciate the fact that she's given me this time of notice so that we can, best serve the town by doing a good search for a new collector. And I know, a lot of other communities have converted from a regular separately appointed collector to a treasurer collector. We did go through an analysis and looked at that. In going through that process, Steve Venuti and I sat down several times, and in the end, we realized that even if you made him a treasurer collector, you're still going to have a full-time body in that office doing the same duties, which means the grade on the position will not change. Even if you change the title, the duties are not going to change, so the grade will be the same. There'll be no financial savings in that manner. The only thing that you do would be to make the position report to the treasurer rather than reporting to the finance director. So there's really not a benefit financially or service-wise to do that. So our goal is to go out for a full-time collector. I think advertising it in that way will get, I think we'll actually get quite a few applications from other experienced collectors, which would be my hope. It is a full-time position. It's benefit eligible. It's budgeted as such in the 2015 budget. Our hope is to try and get somebody in, with a few weeks of cross-training with Becky to allow for some transition there. Becky has committed to making sure that she's here through the tax bills going out the end of December. She wants to make sure that that's all taken care of before she leaves. And I'm going to miss, like I said, her service and her skill set with us. It's been a tremendous asset.
Ready? Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to grant the Assistant Town Administrator for finance and budgets request under the staffing vacancy review policy to fill full-time benefited position tax collector, grade 11.
Second. Moved in second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Cleveland Community Farm sign.
Because it's a permanent sign, it requires your approval. It would point the way to the Littleton Community Farm, just as that sign currently points the way to the Neff property in Prouty Woods. But it does require your approval. And hopefully we'll have the sign out here done soon. I had posted a meeting today of folks from out of town, because we took down the sign, the crooked sign, said town offices. We haven't put up the new quarterboard sign that's going to go up. It's beautiful, looks just like, you'll think you're at the police station. It's a really good looking sign, but it won't, there's nothing there right now, so we won't get that sign up. Great.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Littleton sign bylaw subsection 173-34C to approve the Littleton Community Farms request for the installation of permanent sign on town-owned property at Wilderness Road at Foster Street.
Seconded. Moved in second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? On to minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from our, where's the date?